Chapter 2849. Yes. The underling lowered his head in grievance. Observing his expression, he carefully probed. Then, Master, do you think we should continue? Just as Gu Jinglian was hesitating, Chu Xiaobao's cries suddenly came from the master bedroom. He suddenly got up and walked into the bedroom with a guarded expression. When he turned on the wall lamp, he saw that Xiaobao had woken up from his dream. He sat on the bed, hugging the blanket and sobbing pitifully. He must have dreamed of something scary, so when he woke up, he was so scared that he wailed loudly. He used the blanket to wipe his tears as he sobbed. Gu Jinglian walked over and sat on the side of the bed. He asked in a low voice, "Why are you crying?" Xiaobao. Xiaobao dreamed of mommy. Chu Xiaobao rubbed his wet eyes and sobbed. Xiaobao dreamed that mommy was standing by the bed and touching my face. But I don't know what happened, but in the blink of an eye she disappeared. I chased after her and realized that she was walking away without looking back. No matter how I called her, she didn't seem to hear me. She didn't even turn around to look at me. Speaking of the pain, Chu Xiaobao cried even more pitifully. I chased after her with all my might, but it felt like the road was so long that I couldn't catch up. She didn't even look back and walked further and further away. When I opened my eyes, I realized that I was back on the bed. Does mommy not want me anymore? Does she not want me anymore? Gu Jinglian frowned. What was that saying again? It was called, "Mother and son are connected by heart." In the past, he had thought that this saying sounded too pretentious. But now he had seen it for himself. Mother and son were connected by heart. It was really strange. He immediately opened his mouth and said something that wasn't really coaxing. His tone was still gentle. "You're dreaming, Uncle." Chu Xiaobao immediately cried out. A huge sense of unease engulfed him. Will mommy really not want me anymore? If she doesn't want you, then she doesn't want you. Gu Jinglian immediately expressed his stance. Uncle wants you. Oh, no. Chu Xiaobao cried even harder. Mommy, you can't abandon me. Why do you keep saying mom? Can't you follow uncle? Gu Jinglian was a little unhappy. This was a terrible feeling. He didn't realize that he cared a lot about what the child thought of him. However, it was obvious that in Xiaobao's heart, Chu Ho's position was more important. Naturally, he was dissatisfied. Chu Xiaobao muttered, "You're not my father." He opened his mouth, but the words "I'm your father" didn't come out. Due to his pride, it was impossible for him to admit defeat to a child. Thus he changed the topic and asked, "How am I not? Mom didn't say you were." Chu Xiaobao acted like a mommy's boy. If mommy says you are, then you are. If mommy says you aren't, then you aren't. Gu Jinglian was so angry that his face darkened. This child was only 5 years old, but he was already so biased towards that woman. How could this be? However, he didn't think about it in another way. Since this child was born, he and Chu Ho had depended on each other. If he didn't stick to Chu Ho, who else could he stick to? This nominal father of his had left a very bad impression in his heart at first. It couldn't be helped that the child didn't want to get close to him. But who was Gu Jinglian? Chapter 2850. Chu Xiaobao was crying for his mother, and even Uncle Fu couldn't coax him. Gu Jinglian couldn't take it anymore and shouted, "Don't cry. If you cry again, you won't be able to see her again." Chu Xiaobao sobbed and asked innocently, "If I don't cry, can I see my mother?" "As long as you don't cry." Chu Xiaobao immediately nodded. "Okay, Xiaobao won't cry." It was a promise. Gu Jinglian walked out of the bedroom and immediately ordered, "Go and clean that woman up." Uncle Fu was confused when he heard this. He had just heard that an audacious woman had barged into the Gu residence. Old Master had sent this woman to the cellar. He had heard that this woman was Xiaobao's biological mother, but he hadn't had the time to find out the whole story. "The woman you're talking about, could it be that you're referring to the woman you locked in the cellar?" "Yes," Gu Jinglian said with disgust. "Xiaobao is crying for his mother. Go and clean her up. Don't get her covered in blood." "Yes, I got it." Uncle Fu trembled in fear as he responded. He watched as Gu Jinglian left the room. He didn't know where he was going. Naturally, he didn't dare to ask about his whereabouts. On the way to the cellar, Uncle Fu's imagination ran wild. He wondered what kind of woman could be pregnant with Old Master's child. It should be a beautiful woman, right? Old Master kept a close eye on women. The contraceptive measures were well taken, and such things would never happen. Old Master had a bad temper, and he didn't have much patience for women. This character wasn't born this way, but had been cultivated in the Gu family since he was young. The violent environment had instilled in him an extremely sinister and perverse character. However, Uncle Fu knew that Old Master's nature wasn't bad, but he had always been the one to call the wind and summon the rain. He was used to being spoiled. If he wanted the moon in the sky, no one would dare to pluck the stars for him. Just like that, he became a man of his word. His personality was very cold, or perhaps he had a soft side, but he was stingy with his words. He would never allow himself to show too much tenderness. Firstly, it was because of his identity. He was the supreme leader of the Gu clan. As the head of the Gu clan, he had to conform to the image of this identity. Secondly, there were many pairs of eyes in the Gu family watching them closely. Just like the leader of a pride, only by becoming the most ruthless could he be respected by everyone. However, he was still a mortal after all. In the end, he revealed his soft-hearted side. When he walked to the cellar, the few people guarding Chu Ho saw that he had arrived. It was as if they had been granted amnesty. "Uncle Fu, you're here. What did Master say? How are they?" Uncle Fu asked first. "Uncle Fu, why don't you take a look first? Just now he fainted again. We don't know what to do." Master said to bring him back to his room first. As Uncle Fu spoke, he walked to Chu Ho's side and lowered his body to look at her. "This person can't be dead, right?" Uncle Fu was a little worried. He saw that she was covered in wounds. Her hair was messy and covered her face. There was a pool of salt water under her body. There were 3 whip marks on her back. They were very eye-catching and her flesh was badly mutilated. This was a girl. Why was she so heavy-handed? She's still breathing, but I was a little too heavy-handed just now. I don't know. As he spoke, Uncle Fu had already flipped her over. It didn't matter if she didn't flip over. Chapter 2851. It didn't matter if she didn't turn over. When she turned over, Uncle Fu was shocked. "Red Lotus." He blurted out the name in shock. How could it be her? Or was she Xiao Bao's biological mother? Uncle Fu had a deep impression of this name. 5 years ago, Red Lotus had a high status in the Gu family. There was no other reason than that she was the closest person to Gu Jinglian in the entire Gu family, other than him. How could this be? How could Old Master allow Red Lotus to be pregnant with his child? Moreover, Red Lotus was an undercover agent of the Interpol. She was a traitor of the Gu family. Old Master would never allow her to live. It was unbelievable. He looked at the mess on her body again. Beside her hand, there was a letter of confirmation wet with salt water. Uncle Fu picked it up and looked at it again and again. It was a letter of confirmation about giving up custody of Xiao Bao Chu. Old Master has instructed us to use whatever method we have until she signs it. The person beside him immediately explained. But we've already used up all our methods. This woman is very stubborn. Even in this state, she hasn't given in. Her character is indeed like that. Uncle Fu was not surprised. All right, let's not talk about anything else. Let's carry her into the guest room first. She's so dirty. Are we going to carry her into the room directly? This is Old Master's order. Uncle Fu snorted coldly. Are you doubting my words? No. Since it's Old Master's order, shouldn't we do as he says? His subordinates did not dare to delay and immediately carried her away. Uncle Fu sent a few maids into the room. One of them was responsible for removing Chu Ho's clothes, while the other was responsible for cleaning her body and disinfecting the wounds on her body. A doctor came and examined her. He was so shocked that he kept shaking his head. Uncle Fu immediately asked what had happened. However, the doctor said, "This girl just had an operation." "What? Look at the gauze on her head. Do you see this scar? I haven't put it away properly. I haven't even removed the thread yet." The doctor paused for a moment and shook his head helplessly. The old injury plus the new injury has greatly damaged his vitality. I'm afraid he won't be able to get out of bed for at least half a month. So serious. Uncle Fu was shocked. Yes. The doctor nodded his head heavily. This lady had surgery on her head. Even though it was a minimally invasive surgery, it still damages her vitality. Looking at this scar, it probably hasn't been long since the surgery. With these new injuries, if she doesn't rest well for a while, her body will definitely collapse in the future. I got it. Uncle Fu nodded. Then prescribed some medicine for her to recuperate her body. All right. The doctor prescribed some medicine and handed it to Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu immediately sent someone to get the medicine. The Gu family had a pharmacy and a private medical school. They mainly focused on traditional Chinese medicine. When Gu Jinglian was young, his body was not in good health. He had also used traditional Chinese medicine to recuperate. Hence, Gu Jinglian believed in traditional Chinese medicine very much. In the entire capital, the best doctors of traditional Chinese medicine were all settled in the Gu family's main residence. After getting the medicine, Uncle Fu immediately sent someone to decoct it. However, Chu Ho's body was full of injuries. He was afraid that she wouldn't be able to wake up for a while. Chapter 2852. However, this coma lasted for half a month, and he did not open his eyes. Of course, this was all in the future. Ever since Chu Ho fell into a long coma, Gu Jinglian assigned a few people to take turns to watch over him. Xiao Bao, on the other hand, was left to the nanny to take care of. However, he did not know if the little guy was lovesick. Ever since he woke up from that nightmare, he did not eat well, and he always talked in his sleep in a daze. It was probably because he missed his mother. After all, he had never been separated from Chu Ho for such a long time. However, the sad thing was that Xiao Bao did not know that Chu Ho was lying quietly on the bed next to his room. No one knew when he would wake up. Uncle Fu invited the doctor over 3 times. After all, he had not woken up for so long, and it was not a good idea. If he continued to be in a coma, how was he going to explain it to Old Master? The doctor came to take a look and did a series of tests. In the end, the conclusion was also inconclusive. He only said that Chu Ho's body was severely damaged, probably because he had been suffering from old and new injuries all this time. If the human body was compared to a machine, the human body was also operated by various precise parts. For example, with the passage of time, the parts of a computer would age, and the system would become sluggish. Perhaps due to collisions during use, the internal parts would also be damaged to varying degrees. It was the same for the human body. Chu Ho had received training when he was very young. During training, it was inevitable that he would get injured. In addition, he had been constantly honed in his career as a secret agent and a criminal police officer. He had suffered countless injuries of various sizes. There were bone fractures, dagger wounds, and bullet wounds. There were 2 gunshot wounds on her back. There was a 5-centimeter scar on the side of her waist. She had been slashed by a Nepalese army knife when she was in close combat with a mercenary during a mission. At that time, she had lost a lot of blood. With her amazing willpower, she managed to survive until rescue arrived. There were too many old injuries, and her vitality was greatly damaged. Therefore, once she collapsed, she would really collapse. It would take a long time for her to recover. Uncle Fu's heart ached when he heard that. He looked at the person lying quietly on the bed, but he did not know that this girl had accumulated so many injuries. Just 1 week later, the filming for Extreme Youth was completed. After 4 months, the shooting of the 30-episode youth idol drama came to an end. After the filming of the 26th episode had just ended, the director happily announced that the copyright had been exclusively bought out by the largest video website, PPTVI. Just based on the popularity of Gu Xingze and Yun Shishir, the price of the broadcasting rights alone had already reached 9 figures, setting a new record. Although this kind of theme was a little unpopular, it did not affect the investors' expectations for the ratings. After all, Gu Xingze was the main lead in the movie, which meant that his popularity was guaranteed. Gu Xingze and Yun Shishir were known as the 2 most beautiful women in the entertainment industry. No matter how bad the viewership ratings were, they could still recoup their capital. If he became popular, he would be able to earn a lot of money. Because of PPTVI's exclusive buyout, many television stations were unable to fight for the simulcast rights, which was a pity. Chapter 2853. After the filming ended, the crew held a grand celebration party. In order to promote the show, the entire crew created a popular variety show. The show was called Ace Intelligence Bureau. It was an entertainment show where rising stars competed with variety shows. Once it was released, the ratings were very high. Surprisingly, Gu Xingze also participated in the recording of the show. Gu Xingze rarely accepted variety shows. Because of his celebrity status, he definitely wouldn't end a variety show that had a poor reputation and childish style. There were many high-quality variety shows, but because of the conflicting schedules, he really did not have the energy to deal with these noisy variety shows. Other than some interview shows, Ace Intelligence Bureau was probably the only variety show he accepted after The Love Diary. The script was quickly written and distributed to everyone. Variety shows had scripts. The artists on the show just had to memorize the script and know the content of each segment in advance. In this era of entertainment, even if they did not have any works or popularity, as long as they had enough variety shows and the ability to react on the spot, many A-listers could even gain a lot of passers-by through variety shows. Previously, there was a model who participated in a sports reality show. Because of her strong sense of variety, her value skyrocketed. From 200,000 yuan, her appearance fee was now in the millions. With this amazing popularity, she took on many movies and TV series. Although her acting skills were difficult to describe, it was not that she was not a professional, nor was she born to be an actress. No matter how good the director was, she did not have the aura of an actress. But even so, with the popularity she gained from variety shows, her annual income from endorsements was close to tens of millions. 8:00 p.m. All the main creators were in place and the recording of the show officially started. Every segment was very unique. After the hot opening dance, it was time for the game segment. The game segments were nothing more than games that were popular and could highlight the sense of variety and attraction. For example, 2 people and 3 people, or you draw and I guess. Although Yun Shishir did not do many of these, she was tired of watching them. However, under the company's training, her sense of variety increased day by day. During the game, she completely threw away the burden of being an idol and fought fiercely with the other guests. One of the games was to wear a special sumo suit and play sumo in a place similar to an arena. Yun Shishir was wearing a bloated fighting suit. She and Hua Jin were on the same team as Gu Xingze and another female host. She discussed it with Hua Jin and decided to work together to get rid of Gu Xingze. Hence, Hua Jin was in charge of charging forward. With a roar, he charged towards Gu Xingze, who was also wearing a sumo suit, like cannon fodder. Wow! Hua Jin roared angrily but unexpectedly. Gu Xingze nimbly dodged and he missed. Gu Xingze leaped up and kicked Hua Jin's butt. Hua Jin was caught off guard and fell to the ground. Yun Shishir was completely dumbfounded. This Hua Jin was too weak. Hua Jin immediately stood up and charged towards Gu Xingze again. Yun Shishir did not hesitate and also charged towards Gu Xingze. The 3 of them were entangled together, pushing and shoving each other. Chapter 2854. The female host, who was standing at the side, could not bear to watch this any longer. She stepped forward to help the superstar. But who knew if the superstar had done it on purpose or by accident? He lifted his leg and accidentally kicked her off the stage. Eliminated. Ha 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 ha. Everyone in the audience was rolling over in laughter. This time it was a 2v1. Yun Shishir grinned wickedly as she and Hua Jin besieged him together. Little did they expect that, even after losing a teammate, the superstar would still be so valiant. In just 2 minutes he had taken down both of them. The audience was in an uproar. The viewership ratings for the gaming segment kept rising. Very soon they took the top spot. Next up was the talent segment. The production team sent out Yun Shishir to showcase her singing skills. Yun Shishir sang the theme song for the drama, Lunatic. This song was composed by Gu Xingze and written by Yun Shishir. As the theme song for the drama's trailer, Ace Intelligence Agency had spent a lot of effort to get this song to premiere. Yun Shishir was a little nervous at the beginning. After all, she didn't think her singing was very good. But as the atmosphere warmed up, she gradually relaxed. All the guests were sitting on the sofa. Yun Shishir stood in the middle of the stage, holding the microphone and singing with deep emotion. The only crazy thing I've ever done is to love you until the end of the world, only until now your story, There's no place for me become a hostage of my own making, lose all reason at the end of the road, but your paranoia, your memories, never have my name, never leave a mark in your heart. Awake when I dream, love you. I'm a lunatic missing you, I miss you, hate you. I'm a lunatic but my heart hurts, you don't understand, I'm afraid it's too late, love you one more time. How lucky am I to meet you in my lifetime. The melody was beautiful and lyrical, but it was full of despair. Gu Xingze looked at her silently from beginning to end. Even when the song ended, he was still in a daze for a long time. He seemed to be deep in thought, but no one knew what he was thinking. Next, it was an interview. The main cast and crew sat on the sofa as the host kept asking questions about the filming. Halfway through the conversation, the host suddenly turned to Gu Xingze and asked curiously, "Xingze, you haven't been acting in TV dramas these years. Extreme Youth is probably your first comeback project after 2 years of absence from the TV industry, right?" Gu Xingze nodded lightly. The host continued asking, "Why did you take on this drama?" Another host chimed in, "I heard that Gu Xingze is also a car racer, and his driving skills are outstanding." He casually said, "Actually, this is probably my last TV series." "Oh." The host's eyes widened in surprise. The others, "Are you planning to focus on your film career after this movie?" Gu Xingze denied. "No." "Then why did you say that?" Gu Xingze looked up slightly and faced the camera. His lips curled into a faint smile. "Because I'm planning to officially retire from the entertainment industry." The air suddenly became quiet. Yun Shishir looked at him suddenly. There was an uproar. The audience below the stage exclaimed in surprise. Of course, the fans didn't believe it. Liar. Chairman Gu is being naughty again. Chapter 2855. Naturally, the host did not believe him and asked suspiciously, "Xingze, are you kidding me? You can't do this. You have to know that there are many of your loyal fans sitting below the stage. If you quit the entertainment industry, your fans will be scared to tears." "It's true," Gu Xingze said calmly. "In the 10 years since my debut, I have indeed won a lot of glory, but I think it's time to put an end to my 10 years. The entertainment industry is shameless and is always injecting new blood. There are many outstanding newcomers with good acting skills, but they don't have the opportunity to appear in front of the camera. I think I should give up this opportunity and give the younger generation more opportunities to perform." "No!" The fans below the stage screamed uncontrollably. The scene was out of control. Many fans held up billboards and shouted Gu Xingze's name in support. The director also revealed his face from behind the camera and looked at the stage with some confusion. He was very surprised and hesitated for a moment. Now that the scene was out of control, he wondered if he should rush in with the advertisement and cut this part out. Although it was a live broadcast, there was a 10-minute time difference between what was shown on TV and what was shown on TV. This was to prevent any accidents from happening and to edit it in time. However, even the director was stunned. This sudden announcement was not part of the script. Everyone was flustered and did not know how to react. Fortunately, the host reacted quickly and immediately returned to his senses and continued the interview. "Why did you decide to quit the entertainment industry? Actually, all your fans have seen the glory you have achieved since your debut. Now that you are so popular, isn't it irrational to choose to quit the entertainment industry? In the beginning, entering the entertainment industry was just a change in life for me. I did not treat it as my entire life. However, with the rise of popularity, this job gradually became a responsibility." Gu Xingze paused and smiled slightly. He continued, "However, being in a high workload state all the time makes one feel tired. I don't get a good rest every day, so my fans want to see more of me in front of the camera. My works, my new songs, and even my advertisements. A lot of work far exceeds my workload. Being in this state for a long time is really a very negative way of life. Don't quit the entertainment industry." Many fans were so emotional that they cried. Hua Jin was also stunned. Yun Shishir felt even more conflicted and did not know how to react for a moment. She had never imagined that this program would be his farewell ceremony from the entertainment industry. Was he really going to quit the entertainment industry? Gu Xingze glanced at the audience and suddenly stood up. He walked to the front of the stage and smiled faintly at a fan who was covering her face in pain. "Don't cry, okay? Xingze." Xingzhe, we love you. The fans were sobbing and begging him to stay. Gu Xingze laughed. Don't be sad, okay? I'm just quitting the entertainment industry, but that doesn't mean you won't see me in the future. I'm just too tired. Xingze. The fans cried bitterly. Don't be so tired. You don't have to accept so many drafts. We are all willing to wait for you. But, without any works, artists will be outdated. Gu Xingze said helplessly. Being outdated is more painful than retiring. Chapter 2856. You'll never be out of date. You'll always be our star. You'll always be our favorite idol. Xingze. Don't make such a joke. We'll go crazy. Xingze, if you leave the industry, my heart will die. The scene became extremely sad. Even Gu Xingze, who never accepted emotional content, was teared up by the fans' passionate pleas and sorrowful tears. He turned around and slowly returned to his seat. When he turned around again, his handsome face was reflected in front of the camera. His eyes were so red that it made one's heart ache. I made this decision after much consideration. Gu Xingze sucked in a deep breath of cold air and finally said slowly, I've already booked a flight to America. I'll go back to university to pursue my postgraduate studies. With that, he put down the microphone, stood up abruptly, and left the studio resolutely. The scene was completely out of control. The fans' cries drowned out all the noise. All the main creatives of the production team looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Ever since the show was broadcast, it was the first time that it had to stop halfway because of such a sudden incident. On Weibo, netizens uploaded the edited footage of Gu Xingze's official announcement of his retirement from the entertainment industry. It quickly caused a lot of heated discussion. Gu Xingze announces his retirement from the entertainment industry. Gu Xingze's era is over. Gu Xingze's retirement from the entertainment industry has a hidden reason? Gu Xingze is unwell, and announced his retirement from the entertainment industry to recuperate in America. On the internet, the fans were in an uproar because of this matter. Gu Xingze's latest Weibo post was quickly pushed to the top of the trending list. Many fans left comments to persuade their idol to stay. Many of them had become Gu Xingze's fans since they were in school. Until now, some of them had become moms and some of them had matured and grown up. Gu Xingze had debuted for 10 years, and their fans had been around for 10 years. From the popular newbie when he first debuted to the Triphibian Heavenly King now, the name Gu Xingze was the youth of many people. One could imagine how much of a shock this news was to Gu Xingze's die-hard fans. It was too sudden. He was not mentally prepared at all. This was like bad news. How painful was that? Many fans who chased after celebrities could empathize with them. When the entire cast and crew returned home, Yun Shirshir noticed that Gu Xingze had quietly left the cast and crew's group chat. She immediately called Qin Zhou. Qin Zhou picked up the phone and talked about this matter. Qin Zhou helplessly said that he also just found out about it. Without any warning, Gu Xingze announced his withdrawal and did not mention it to anyone. Even a close friend like Qin Zhou had never mentioned it to him. Why are you suddenly saying that you want to quit the entertainment industry? Yun Shirshir was puzzled. What's going on? After I found out about this, I kept calling him, but I couldn't get through. Could something have happened? Yun Shirshir could not help but worry. Chapter 2857. I understand. Yun Shirshir hung up the phone. Qin Zhou told her not to care about this matter. But how could she not care and not think about it? Yun Shirshir could not help but feel upset and did not rest well the entire night. In the WeChat group, after a heated discussion, the director said, Xingze's announcement of his withdrawal from the entertainment industry is his personal decision. We have no right to interfere with how he decides his own life. Don't talk too much about it. Soon the group was dead silent. On Weibo, the heated discussion about Gu Xingze's incident never stopped. Many fans acted as if it was the end of the world and wantonly expressed their emotions on Weibo. Many people posted their purchases of Gu Xingze's records, movies, albums, and all kinds of merchandise. Some of the posters had already turned yellow and were stained with the traces of time. Some of the records had Gu Xingze's signature written on them. Fans cried and complained that the name Gu Xingze was all her youth. She had thought that she could stay by this idol's side until the end of time. Her sentiments resonated with countless fans. Those who had never pursued an idol probably did not know how it felt. It was a feeling more painful than being heartbroken. At this time, many keyboard warriors also appeared and wantonly accused Gu Xing's fans of being brainless fans. Instead of paying attention to the matter of number 8 in the Sky Palace, they actually paid attention to an entertainer. Entertainers are really ruining the country. Instead of paying attention to national affairs, they actually pay attention to a celebrity. I'm so disappointed in young people these days. I heard that Gu Xing's annual income is 9 figures. He's just an entertainer. How can he earn so much money? Those scientists who work hard on the front lines can't even earn 1% of this in their lifetime, right? This country is going to be finished. Soon, fans retorted. We can't make decisions on national affairs. But after liking Xingzi for so many years, we've received a lot of positive energy from him. He works hard and is passionate about public welfare. He's an outstanding young idol. There are too many fascinating things about him. This is irreplaceable. Loving Xingzi has become a way of life for countless of us fans. The scolding war continued to escalate. After Gu Xingzi announced his retirement from the entertainment industry, it triggered a series of wars. Yun Shishir didn't want to pay attention to these disturbances. She put the phone on the pillow, but her mind was preoccupied. The next morning, Yun Shishir was woken up by a phone call from Xiao Shui. Shishir. It was a deafening roar. Xiao Shui cried in despair. Do you know? Xingzi announced his withdrawal from the entertainment industry. Woo 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 woo. What should I do? What should I do? I'm heartbroken. Just as Qin Zhou had predicted, Gu Xingzi held a grand press conference at 9 o'clock in the morning in the conference room of the 5-star hotel. In front of the camera, Gu Xingzi stood on the rostrum with a calm expression. The flashlights flashed, illuminating his face with white light. I officially announced that from today onwards, I, Gu Xingzi, will be leaving the entertainment industry. After he finished speaking, he bowed deeply. His calm expression was hidden in the shadows. The press conference was broadcasted live on different video websites. The television stations took turns to broadcast it and reported it seriously. Gu Xingzi's calm and handsome face was projected on the big screen in the mall. Chapter 2858. Many fans gathered under the big screen. When they heard this news, they covered their mouths and choked. This was probably the most morale day in the entertainment industry. 2 days after the press conference, this matter was still fermenting. Because of Gu Xingzi's matter, extreme youth suddenly became the center of attention. When the entire production team was doing promotions, only Gu Xingzi was absent. In the face of the media's questions, all the topics revolved around Gu Xingzi's name. The entire production team was very embarrassed. All the media was targeting a lead actor who was no longer participating in any promotions. This was the most frustrating thing. There were some questions that they also wanted to answer, but what exactly were the answers? Why did Gu Xingzi quit the entertainment industry? Even they did not have an answer. The director kept repeating, "Please don't ask questions that have nothing to do with the production." I'm sorry, I don't know. However, the media seemed to want to get to the bottom of it. Backstage, the director almost flew into a rage. Gu Xingzi, why are they all asking questions about him? It's not like we can interfere with a decision like quitting the entertainment industry. We have no way of knowing the reason for quitting. These media outlets really have no standards at all. When Yun Shishir heard this, her heart sank. Gu Xingzi's fans are too much. Isn't it just quitting the entertainment industry? It's like they're crying at a funeral. Look at those brainless fans at the venue. It's as if I'm the one who forced Gu Xingzi to quit. It's so annoying. When Hua Jin heard the director's words, he felt a little uncomfortable. Crying at a funeral. Director, do you have to say such harsh words? Am I not telling the truth? The director was really angry. Why are you sticking up for him? I think it's unreasonable and too much for you to say that about Senior Xingzi's fans. Hua Jin said. Perhaps Xingzi has long had the idea of quitting the entertainment industry because of his health. When we were filming the show that day, I could tell that he didn't look too good. However, even if he wanted to quit the industry, it would have been after filming all the scenes and when the production team was wrapping up. His withdrawal from the industry had indirectly helped the production team gain popularity. But even if he has decided to quit the entertainment industry, you shouldn't say that about his fans out of basic respect. Who do you think you are? The director cursed. Hua-jin, are you trying to challenge me? Who do you think you are? You're just a gigolo who was raised as a mistress and relied on the unspoken rules to get to where you are. I say, those brainless fans, why are you blindly interfering? Get lost. You! Hua-jin was furious and glared at him. He had dug up all the old grudges and even used such malicious words against him. He was so excited that he wanted to rush forward. Yun Shirshir immediately stopped him. Hua-jin, don't be rash. Under her persuasion, Hua-jin finally managed to hold himself back. However, she turned around and suddenly walked over to the director. She stopped in front of him. Shirshir, what are you doing? Before he could finish his sentence, Yun Shirshir raised her hand and slapped him across the face. Everyone couldn't help but be dumbfounded. There were many big shots who dared to challenge the director. However, Yun Shirshir was the first person to slap the director in front of everyone. She was crazy. What are you doing? The director covered his face and flew into a rage out of humiliation. Chapter 2859. If you don't respect others, don't expect others to respect you. Then Yun Shirshir said calmly. Director, I think Hua-jin is right. You don't have to take out your anger on Xing's fans for the media's mistakes. And you don't have to use those despicable words to insult Hua-jin. You! The director gritted his teeth and glared at her. But he only dared to glare at her. Who was Yun Shirshir? Muyaja's wife. Just the name Muyaja alone was something he could not afford to offend even if there were 10 of him. Therefore, he could only swallow his anger after being slapped by her. Yun Shirshir returned to Hua-jin's side and held his hand. Let's go. Because of her slap, Hua-jin's pent-up anger dissipated a lot. After leaving the television station building, Hua-jin said a little gloomily, Actually, I feel quite disappointed when Gu Xingze left the entertainment industry. Disappointed? Yes, he has always been my goal. I have always regarded him as my beacon. I hope that one day I can replace him and become a popular idol. However, I feel quite disappointed when he leaves the entertainment industry. Yun Shirshir's lips twitched. You can't surpass him. Oh. Everyone can't be replaced. Moreover, he is the idol of the Triphibian Heavenly King. Just by singing he can crush you to death. You can't sing well, so how can you compare to him? He has won an international music award. What about you? You have to rely on post-production tuning to sing the theme song. Oh. Hua-jin pouted. Stop talking. His heart ached. The video of Gu Xingze's press conference was broadcasted through various channels and presented to the public. He was the symbol of an era. His 10 years had been incomparably glorious. Fans had fantasized about accompanying him through his second decade and third decade. However, they suddenly received the news of his departure. All the fans were devastated by this shocking news. Their overly fanatical behavior caused the other netizens to be dissatisfied. They began to denounce these die-hard fans on a large scale. The internet was in a mess. Yun Shirshir didn't know how she felt about this matter. However, the feeling of loss stayed with him for a few days. After bidding farewell to Hua-jin, she slowly walked along the street aimlessly. However, little did she know that a black car was slowly following behind her. She was so immersed in her own thoughts that she didn't realize that there was a car following closely behind her. His phone suddenly rang. Yun Shirshir picked up her phone and saw Gu Xingze's name on the screen. Xingze? What's wrong with him? Disregarding her doubts, she quickly picked up the call and placed the phone to her ear. Gu Xingze's calm and gentle voice could be heard from the other end. Shirshir, it's me. Yun Shirshir was stunned. She stopped in her tracks and froze on the spot. It had been a long time since he had called her by her name. Perhaps it was because calling her Shirshir was too intimate and ambiguous. Hence, he had always called her by her full name. Now this sudden gentle call had really caught her off guard. Xingze. Are you on the street? Gu Xingze heard some noises and car horns on the other end of the line, and guessed that she was on the streets. Yeah. Yun Shirshir said. I saw the live broadcast of your press conference. Chapter 2860. I saw the live broadcast of your press conference. Huh. You really have the heart to do that. Yun Shirshir looked around. Coincidentally, there was a big screen in the shopping mall not far from her. On the screen, Gu Xing's announcement of his retirement from the entertainment industry was still being played. Below the screen there was a circle of fans. Even though there was a distance between them, Yun Shirshir knew that the eyes of these fans must be filled with tears. Your fans really can't bear for you to quit. Yun Shirshir sighed. You might be a little too heartless. Why did you quit the entertainment industry? There's no reason. I'm just tired of living in front of the camera. Regarding this topic, Gu Xingzi did not delve too much into it. He changed the topic. Shirshir, can we meet? As if he was afraid that she would reject him, he smiled and said, This is probably the last time we'll see each other. What do you mean? He said, My flight is at 1 in the morning. After tonight, I will return to America and never come back. Although she was mentally prepared, when she heard Gu Xingzi say that he would never come back, she felt a little suffocated. Sure. Gu Xingzi took a deep breath. I want to see you. Even if we don't say anything, I want to see you for the last time. Yun Shirshir also took a deep breath. She looked up at the starry sky and asked, Where are you? I'm at the office. I just signed a bunch of agreements. Gu Xingzi said again, Where are you? Tell me, I'll go and find you. I'm in the city center now, but there are too many people here. It's not convenient for you, right? With Gu Xingzi's national recognition, even if he was fully armed, he would be recognized in a matter of minutes if he walked on the streets. Yun Shirshir tried to get his opinion. Do you know the park at Hushin Island? Yes. Are you driving? Yes, I'll drive. I'll wait for you at the car park at Hushin Island. Okay. After hanging up the phone, Yun Shirshir immediately walked to the side of the street and flagged down a car. A taxi stopped beside her and she immediately got in. The driver glanced at her and stepped on the accelerator. Then he realized what was going on and suddenly slammed on the brakes. What's wrong? Yun Shirshir turned pale with fright. She was startled by the sudden braking. You are that. The driver thought hard for a while. The TV drama that my wife has been following recently is called Lethal Beauty. You're the second female lead in it, right? It's that bad woman. My wife hated you at first. But after watching some of your variety shows, I fell in love with you again. Looking at her up close, she really is a beautiful lady. Yun Shirshir smiled awkwardly. I didn't expect my luck to be so good today. I picked up a superstar. Superstar, can I have your autograph? Okay, but you have to drive me to my destination first. Oh, okay. The driver was so excited that he didn't even turn on the meter, and just slammed on the accelerator. Along the way, the traffic lights were congested. The driver suddenly glanced at the rear mirror and made a tisk sound. The Lexus has been following us all the way. Maybe it's a coincidence. Yun Shirshir said casually. The driver said half-jokingly, Could it be the paparazzi? Why are there so many paparazzi following us every day? Yun Shirshir didn't think much of it. Chapter 2861. However, when time came to a standstill, countless thoughts rushed into her mind. Yun Shirshir could not help but recall everything that had happened between her and Gu Xingzi. Scenes flashed before her eyes like a merry-go-round. Unknowingly, her eyes turned red. He said that he was going to America and would not be coming back. In other words, tonight would be the last time they met. She actually felt a little reluctant to part with him. Just as she was lost in her thoughts, her phone rang again. She picked up her phone, thinking that it was a call from Gu Xingzi. Unexpectedly, it was a video call from Gong Jia. Yun Shirshir was stunned. Looking at the time, it was already late. Why would he call at this hour? On second thought, due to the time difference, it was probably still daytime over at Xiaojia's place. Perhaps something had happened. She picked up the video call. On the other end, Gong Jia's handsome face was reflected on the screen. However, his expression was very serious and even a little nervous. Xiaojia, what's wrong? Why do you look so nervous? Gong Jia did not bother with pleasantries and went straight to the point. Sis, uncle can speak now. What? Yun Shirshir turned pale with fright and stood up abruptly. You're saying that Dad can speak now? Yes. Gong Jia was also greatly encouraged, but he still frowned. I told him that it wasn't easy for him to recover the function of his vocal cords. He must pay attention to his recuperation, but he insisted on talking to you. No. Yun Shirshir was resolute. He can't speak immediately after recovering the function of his vocal cords. Let him recover completely first before we talk about it. I advised him that too, but he didn't listen at all. Gongjie said solemnly, Sis, you should talk to him. Perhaps your words will be more persuasive. Alright, let me see him. Yun Shirshir also missed him. Gongjie froze the video call. Then he got someone to carry Yun Yeching into a wheelchair and pushed it over. As soon as Yun Yeching's figure was reflected on the screen, Gongjie gently said a few words to him. Yun Yeching immediately understood and looked at the phone. Knowing that the other side of the phone was his beloved daughter, he opened his mouth to speak in an unbelievably hoarse voice. Shirshir, Daddy has caused you to suffer. Dad. Yun Shirshir furrowed her brows as tears welled up in her eyes. She quickly said, Dad, don't talk so much. It wasn't easy for you to recover the function. Be careful of your sister. Yun Yeching ignored her advice and squeezed out these words with much difficulty while holding onto the wheelchair. Yun Shirshir was completely stunned. Sister? Yun. She is not dead. His voice was as rough and broken as gravel, but even though he was speaking with great difficulty, she still understood what he was trying to convey. Yuna, she's not dead? Dad, how did you know? Because the person who attacked me that night was her. Yun Yeching seemed to have prepared a script as he said agitatedly. It was her who destroyed me with sulfuric acid. She will definitely look for you. You must be careful. Yun Shirshir's face instantly turned ghastly pale as her lips trembled. How is that possible? How could she do such a cruel thing to you? Chapter 2862. Just as she finished speaking, she suddenly felt a car slowly approaching from behind. The ground beneath her feet was instantly illuminated by the high-beam headlights, turning it as bright as a white carpet. The low rumble of the car's engine rose and fell continuously. Yun Shirshir's heart skipped a beat. She turned around stiffly and saw a black Lexus parked quietly not far away. The car's high-beam headlights were extremely dazzling. The light suddenly changed and in an instant, her eyes were as bright as the aurora. Yun Shirshir could not open her eyes because of the blinding light. She could not help but raise her hand to shield her eyes. She subconsciously staggered backward, only to see the car release its brakes and step on the accelerator, speeding toward her. Yun Shirshir hurriedly retreated and wanted to avoid it. Suddenly, a man's steady voice came from behind. Shirshir, be careful. Immediately after, a figure pounced on her. It was Gu Xingzi. When he pounced on her, he did not forget to use his arms to protect her. Hence, even when the two of them fell to the ground, she fell into his arms and did not collide directly with the ground because of his protection. Her phone, however, did not escape being crushed by the car's wheels and was directly crushed. The car brushed past the two of them and stopped very quickly. Immediately after, a woman got out of the car. Yun Shirshir turned around abruptly and saw that the woman was wearing a simple outfit that was as black as ink. However, under her short hair, her face was extremely ugly and covered with hideous scars. Even so, Yun Shirshir could still recognize her at a glance. Based on her facial features, this woman was Yun Na. It turned out that she was in the Lexus that had been following her all this while. Yun Shirshir shuddered at the thought of this. She then thought of Yun Yeching's words earlier. Yun Na is not dead. She destroyed me with sulfuric acid. Yun Shirshir reacted to everything at once. She raised her head abruptly and glared fiercely at her, crying with every word. Yun Na, it's you. You're the one who harmed Dad. Shut up. Yun Na said coldly. He's not my dad. I'm not Yun Na too. Yun Shirshir, tonight is the day you die. Yun Na didn't make any long-winded speech. Her goal was very simple. Kill her and Yun Shirshir. Then, more than half of her hatred would be satisfied. She originally wanted to find that child to avenge her humiliation. After all, that child called Yu was the real culprit who had harmed her. But on second thought, compared to killing a person, making that person lose the person they loved the most was the cruelest punishment. If Yu lost his mother, Wouldn't that be hell on earth? With this thought in mind, Yun Na decided to get rid of Yun Shishir. As for Gu Xingze, since he had interfered, then he would be dealt with as well. Yun Na suddenly took out a gun and loaded it skillfully. She raised her hand and aimed the black muzzle at her. There was no need to be sloppy when it came to killing people, and there was no need for so much nonsense. She would not give Yun Shishir any chance to escape. She would not give this man a chance to breathe either. Fast, accurate, and ruthless. Kill them all. Yun Na sneered. The cold muzzle was aimed at her glabella. The moment she pulled the trigger, Gu Xingze reacted faster than her. He pushed Yun Shishir away abruptly and rolled on the ground himself. The bullets hit the ground, sending sparks flying and smoke curling up. Chapter 2863. Yun Na wanted to aim at him again, but Gu Xingze suddenly bounced up from the ground and rushed toward her without hesitation. With a beautiful roundhouse kick, he sent the pistol in her hand flying far away. Ah! Yun Na groaned in pain. She immediately hugged her wrist, her face contorted in pain. It hurts. Gu Xingze's roundhouse kick had broken her wrist. She gripped her wrist tightly. When she looked up again, her eyes were already bloodshot. Every single one of you is protecting her. Are you all her dogs? Is there a need to be so loyal? Even if you have to die for her, are you not afraid? Yun Shishir gritted her teeth. From the corner of her eye, she saw another person getting out of the car. She immediately turned her head and saw a man in black suddenly crouching down and walking quickly toward Gu Xingze. Yun Na wasn't the only one here. Yun Na wasn't the only one in the car. There were others. Oh no! Yun Shishir immediately blurted out. Xingze, be careful. Gu Xingze heard her shout and was a little distracted. When he turned around, Yun Na immediately pulled out a sharp dagger from her waist. She pulled it out of the scabbard, held the handle tightly, and stabbed him viciously in the back. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. Ugh. Gu Xingze was caught off guard and was stabbed by the dagger. He immediately arched his body. From the corner of his eye, he saw another man in black immediately walk over. He reached out and quietly grabbed his throat, dragged him to the side and punched him hard in the chest. Cough. Gu Xingze was numb from the pain from this punch. He frowned and the veins on his forehead popped out. The man quickly restrained him, grabbed him by the throat, and pinned him high against the wall. Yun Na rushed over without thinking. Holding the dagger, she ruthlessly stabbed him in the abdomen again. Ah! No and no! Yun Shishir was so frightened by this cruel scene that she was speechless. Her mind went blank, but she forced herself to regain her senses. From the corner of her eye, she suddenly saw the pistol that had been kicked aside by Gu Xingze. She hurriedly crawled over and held the pistol tightly with trembling hands. She had never held a pistol before, so she didn't know how to use the heavy metal object in her hand. What to do? What to do? Yun Shishir was so anxious that her face turned pale, and her forehead was covered with cold sweat. At that moment Yun Na stabbed him again. When she suddenly pulled out the dagger, it was dripping with blood. Stop! Yun Shishir screamed and rushed over. She clumsily aimed the gun at the man's feet and pulled the trigger. Because Yun Na had already loaded the gun, the bullet flew out quickly. In the blink of an eye, the bullet hit the man's leg. The man staggered and knelt on one knee. Bang! Bang! She fired 2 more shots at his back. Yun Na saw that she had a gun in her hand and was about to rush toward her. Yun Shishir, I'll kill you. Go to hell for me. Seeing her rush over, Yun Shishir trembled and held the gun tightly. She broke down and said, You're the one who should go to hell. Bang! Bang! The bullet shot through Yun Na's other intact wrist and penetrated her flesh. The other bullet lost its center of gravity and made a hole in the wall. Yun Na's dagger fell to the ground. Yun Shishir, you. She couldn't believe it. She didn't expect that Yun Shishir could hit the target on her first try. Chapter 2864. She had practiced for a long time to learn how to use a pistol. Yun Na was in so much pain that she could no longer move her hands. Like a walking corpse, she rushed toward her and slammed her to the ground. Yun Shishir wanted to pull the trigger again, but she realized that there were no more bullets. This pistol only had 6 bullets. She was shocked and panicked. Yun Na was on top of her. Because she was angry from embarrassment, She opened her mouth and bit down hard on her shoulder like a mad dog. Ah! Yun Shirshir groaned in pain and broke out in a cold sweat. She suddenly reached out and strangled Yun Na's neck. She was on the verge of losing her mind. She did not care about those so-called scruples and used her fingers to crush Yun Na's eyeballs. Because of the enormous pain, Yun Na let out a shrill cry hysterically, and she actually rolled over to the side. She was too anxious. She was too anxious to get rid of Yun Shirshir. Instead, she was flustered because of this. Yun Shirshir immediately got up from the ground and pounced on her again. She used her hands to strangle her ruthlessly. Angry and desperate, she shouted at the top of her lungs, "Yun Na, why are you so cruel?" Yun Na was choked until she could not breathe. Her entire head was red because of the lack of oxygen in her brain. Her eyes bulged and her veins popped out. Yun Shirshir gritted her teeth and said, "I hate you. I hate you. You're the one who destroyed this family. You deserve to die. The one who deserves to die is not me. It's you. You're the one who caused Dad to be like that. He's your biological father. How can you treat him so cruelly?" "He's not." Yun Na screamed in despair. "He's not my father. He's not. Yun Shirshir, you took away everything that belonged to me. Even if I go to hell one day, I want you to be buried with me." When Yun Shirshir thought of Yun Yecheng's miserable state, she hated this detestable and evil woman even more. She tightened her grip on Yun Na's throat and exerted more force. She wanted to kill her. Even if she was sentenced to break the law, she would not hesitate. This woman is crazy. If he didn't kill her, she would kill him and Xingzhe. She absolutely couldn't tolerate her hurting Xingzhe again. Yun Shirshir and Yun Na were in a fierce confrontation. Behind them, the man in black finally got up from the ground. He had been shot in the knee, and one of his legs had lost its support. However, when he saw that Yun Na was at a disadvantage, he immediately turned around and returned to the car. He opened the trunk and took out a silver handgun. The man turned around. Under the moonlight, the gun glinted coldly and attracted Gu Xing's attention. It was a gun. He followed the man's gaze and realized that he was closing in on Yun Shirshir. He gradually raised his right hand, swiftly loaded the gun, and put his index finger on the trigger. No. Without a second thought, Gu Xingze ignored the blood flowing out of his abdomen and back. Just as the man raised his gun and pulled the trigger, Gu Xingze pounced on him. Ugh! The man was caught off guard and was pushed to the ground by Gu Xingze. However, the trigger had already been pulled, but the bullet's trajectory suddenly deviated. Originally, if the shot had not deviated, the bullet should have pierced through the back of Yun Shirshir's head. However, because of Gu Xingze's interference, the bullet hit the car window beside Yun Shirshir. Bang! A loud sound was heard. The car alarm sounded. Chapter 2865. The glass shattered. The flying glass cut her cheeks and exposed her skin. Finally, the glass shards pierced Yun Shirshir's eyes. The eyes were the weakest part of a human being. When the glass shards pierced her eyes, the piercing pain made her cry out in pain. Because of the sharp object piercing her eyes, Yun Shirshir felt a piercing pain in her eyes. Her whole body fell backward. Her eyes hurt. After the whole world spun around, her head hit the concrete floor heavily. Her eyes were shaking from the pain. Then she seemed to feel the glass from the car window falling on her body. Shirshir. She seemed to hear Gu Xingze calling her name, but she couldn't hear what he was shouting. The pain seemed to have taken over all her consciousness. So painful, her eyes hurt. Yun Shirshir panicked. She touched her eyelids with trembling hands. Her fingertips touched a patch of warm blood that stained her eyelashes. It flowed down her cheeks and stained her clothes. She endured the searing pain and opened her eyes a little. Her vision was blurred by blood, as if covered by a layer of red fog. It was so hazy that she couldn't see anything. She could only vaguely distinguish the glaring light. I can't see anything." Yun Shirshir choked with sobs. Gu Xingze frowned and gritted his teeth. He grabbed the dagger from the ground with difficulty. The man behind him wanted to get up and make a final struggle. However, Gu Xingze didn't give him the chance to do so. The dagger pierced into his chest. That was where his heart was. Gu Xingze knew very well that this dagger had pierced into his chest. He didn't want to get up. The man's eyes widened in disbelief as he was stabbed in the chest. His face instantly became distorted as he looked at the man covered in blood in disbelief. He had been stabbed so many times, but he still had so much strength to actually stab the dagger so deeply. The man immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. This slash was almost destructive. His entire body collapsed on the third floor. His eyes were wide open in anger, and he no longer struggled. Gu Xingzi stood up and staggered over to Yun Shishir's side to help her up. However, when he exerted a little force, it affected the location of the wound, and blood gushed out again. Yun Shishir shrieked in fright when she felt someone touching her. Gu Xingzi immediately coaxed her gently. "Shishir, don't be afraid. It's me, Xingzi." He held back the sweet taste in his throat and glanced at Yun Na, who was unconscious on the ground. He said to her, "Let's go to the hospital." Before he could finish his words, his legs went soft and he almost fell to his knees. When Yun Shishir heard his voice, she endured the pain and groped around aimlessly. Finally, she found his hand. She immediately grasped his hand tightly. "Xingzi, how are you? Are you seriously injured? Did you lose a lot of blood?" "No." Gu Xingzi endured the pain and gritted his teeth. He pretended to smile calmly and said, "I'm fine." Yun Shishir didn't believe him. She rubbed his body, but he held her hand instead. "Your eyes are injured. Let's go to the hospital, okay?" "Okay." Yun Shishir touched her face in pain. When she touched the sticky blood, she became even more flustered. She couldn't see anything. Chapter 2866. Seeing that she was flustered, Gu Xingzi hugged her gently to calm her down. "Don't be afraid. I'm here. Everything will be fine," he said calmly. "Everything will be fine, okay? Don't be afraid." The two of them stood up while leaning against each other. Yun Shishir couldn't see and had lost her sense of direction. She could only use all her strength to put Gu Xingzi's arm on her shoulders and try her best to support all his weight. Gu Xingzi hugged her shoulders. He knew deep down that this idiot must have wanted to use his body to support her. However, she was also severely injured. He couldn't bear to let her bear all his weight. He really couldn't bear to let her bear all his weight. Hence he shifted his weight to the other side. He hugged her with one hand and covered his bleeding wound with the other. He slowly walked towards the intersection. Yun Shishir couldn't see. Because she couldn't see how pale his face was at this moment. His face was pale and covered in cold sweat. Especially his originally rosy lips. They had lost all color due to excessive blood loss. And because she couldn't see at all how gentle Gu Xingzi's gaze was on her at this moment. It was a gentleness that was engraved in his bones. If he could, he wanted to look at her as much as possible. He wanted to imprint her features deeply into his bones and blood. If he could, he wanted time to stop right here and now. He wanted to look at her quietly until he got tired of looking at her. If he could, he wanted to go back to the day when they first met. He would definitely hug her tightly in his arms. When that man appeared, he would take over her entire heart. Gu Xingzi's lips suddenly trembled. Looking at Yun Shishir's side profile as she endured the pain, he couldn't bear to let her go just like that. For a moment, his eyes were filled with tears and they were red. "Shishir. Before I came, I thought of countless parting words." Gu Xingzi tried his best to widen his eyes and force back his tears. His Adam's apple bobbed, and the corners of his lips curled up. He smiled and said, "I want to wish you happiness. I wish you happiness forever. But I selfishly think that I might not be able to be generous to wish you happiness." Yun Shishir's expression suddenly froze. "How I wish that you couldn't live without me. Xingzi. I like you." Gu Xingzi endured the pain and his voice was as soft as the wind. "I really like you." Cough. He tried his best to force a smile. "I love it so much." This was the first time in his life that he loved someone so deeply. He couldn't accept this. For the first time in his life, he wanted to obtain someone, but after exhausting everything, he still couldn't obtain her. However, no matter how unwilling he was, "I still want you to be happy." Gu Xingzi muttered. Shishir, do you know? I want to be generous and wish you happiness, but I also selfishly hope that you'll never be happy for me." But if you're lonely, I can't bear it. Yun Shirshir suddenly felt the weight on one of her shoulders collapse. Her shoulder was suddenly empty, and she heard a heavy sound. It was the sound of someone falling to the ground. Xingza! Yun Shirshir was so scared that she cried. Xingza, where are you? Chapter 2867. Xingza, where are you? She immediately squatted down and desperately searched until she found an arm. She crawled over along the arm and hugged Gu Xingza in her arms with heartache. Tears kept flowing from her eyes and dripped onto his body along with blood. Xingza, don't scare me. Don't scare me. She was so shocked that she was flustered. It was as if the whole world had collapsed. She shouldn't have accepted his appointment. She should have rejected him cruelly. That way, even if he was disappointed, he could have safely boarded the plane to America and not ended up like this. She was wrong. Oh God. She knew she was wrong. She really knew she was wrong. Could she rewind time? Could she rewind time? She didn't want anything to happen to him. Sure. Gu Xingza's breathing suddenly quickened. He opened his eyes and looked up at her. Seeing her crying, his heart felt like it was being stabbed by a knife. Don't cry. Xingza, don't scare me. It's okay. Gu Xingza smiled gently and coaxed her softly. I don't care about life and death anymore. He had depression, so he didn't care about death. From the beginning to the end, he had locked himself in his own world. The only light he saw was her, but he didn't hold on to it firmly. In this world, the only thing he couldn't care less about was her tears. It's all my fault. It's all my fault. Yun Shirshir cried bitterly. Let's exchange, okay? I'll exchange my life for yours. Please don't die. You can't die. Don't leave me so cruelly. Will you forget me? Gu Xingza asked with difficulty. When Yun Shirshir heard this, tears welled up in her eyes. He continued to ask stubbornly. If I die, will you remember me for a second? Yun Shirshir was very sad and deliberately provoked him. If you die, I'll definitely forget you. The more I forget, the better. So, when Gu Xingza heard this, he laughed softly and interrupted her. Yes, that would be best. Yun Shirshir was stunned. When Gu Xingza heard that she was going to forget about him, there was a sense of loss and comfort in his eyes. He was disappointed because she said that she wanted to forget about him. Comforting like this, what was left for her was not those painful memories. I also don't want to leave you with sad memories. Gu Xingza's eyelids became heavier and heavier. His face lost all its luster and became extremely gloomy, but he still tried to smile. Forget me. It would be best. His eyelashes gradually drooped. His fair hand suddenly slipped from her palm and hung limply to the side. The air suddenly became deathly still. In his ears, it was as if the line of death had been drawn. She could no longer hear any sound, and she could no longer feel any warmth or undulations from his body. She could only feel that his body was gradually losing its warmth, and it was becoming increasingly cold. Xingza? She forced a smile and gently touched his cold face, trying her best to pull the corner of his lips. Xingza, can you talk to me? I want to talk to you. I'm scared. I'm really scared. Liar. Yun Shirshir furrowed her eyebrows. Didn't you say that with you around I don't need to be afraid? But why did you leave me behind? Gu Xingza did not react at all, let alone make a sound. Chapter 2868. Gu Xingza did not react at all. His eyelids were slightly closed, and his expression was calm. However, he was like an empty shell. So empty that there was no trace of life. No! She finally began to panic. She groped around and held his face, pressing her forehead against his cheek. However, she could only feel his cold temperature. Don't. I beg you, don't leave me. She begged in despair. Using all her strength, she hugged his shoulders tightly, trying to transfer all her body temperature to him. Xingza, I was lying to you just now, Yun Shirshir said in pain. I was lying to you. I wanted you to live well. I was lying to you. I won't forget you. How could I bear to forget you? Memories flashed through her mind like a revolving lantern. When they first met, he smiled and sized her up. His beautiful eyes were slightly curved, and a warm smile appeared on his face. You're so clean and beautiful. Why did you become the assistant of a small-time model? How useless. You're much prettier than her. If you enter the entertainment industry, you'll definitely be popular. Your temperament is just right for the female lead in my heart. Yoon Shirshir could no longer hold back her heart-wrenching sadness. She burst into tears and hugged his cold body in a sorry state, crying like a desperate child. I like you so much. I like you so much. Gu Xing's smile was still vivid in her mind. At Huan Yu's annual cocktail party, he led her to the dance floor. He was dressed in a suit. He leaned over slightly to her and made an inviting gesture, like an elegant and noble gentleman. May I have a dance with you? He smiled. His teeth were pure white and extremely charming. Life felt like the first time they met. Yoon Shirshir gritted her teeth and hugged his head that had no center of gravity. Tears gushed out like a fountain. She tried her best to open her eyes wide, wanting to take a good look at him. However, the wider her eyes were, the deeper the pain. In the end, all she could see was a blood-red blur. She could not see anything clearly. No! Yoon Shirshir cried helplessly. Let me take a good look at you. Xingza, let me take a good look at you. I can't see anything. Yoon Shirshir grabbed his collar tightly. The pain was so great that her soul was about to shatter. Xingza! She called his name in despair, and her cries echoing in the huge parking lot. Shirshir? In the darkness, a tall figure walked towards her. Yoon Shirshir opened her eyes abruptly, only to see the superstar's gentle smile. Xingza! She was excited and hugged him. You're not dead. You're not dead. She was so happy that her words were all jumbled up. She only knew how to repeat the same sentence. Her heart ached as she hugged him tightly. I think I Xingza, I really think you leave, I really think I shua. Yoon Shirshir's tears flowed uncontrollably. Don't make such jokes again. You leave me, leave me, you leave. Shirshir. Gu Xingza calmed her down. His warm hand gently caressed her hair. He smiled and said, I'm leaving. You're leaving? Yes. Where are you going? To a place very far away. Gu Xingza's tone was relaxed. This is probably a form of relief. To him, the pain of living and falling into darkness forever was a form of relief. Chapter 2869. Meeting you is the luckiest thing in my life. But meeting you has already exhausted all my luck. Gu Xingza smiled faintly. But I don't regret it. Gu Xingza suddenly turned around and looked back with a smile. I'm leaving. No. Yoon Shirshir immediately got up and chased after him desperately. Xingza, don't go. However, Gu Xingza seemed to not hear her voice. His back view gradually disappeared from her sight. She used all her strength to chase after him, but no matter how hard she tried, she could not catch up with him. Yoon Shirshir woke up in the darkness and opened her eyes wide. Through her blurry vision, she could vaguely feel a strong light shining down from the top of her head. It's okay. The surroundings were noisy, and the voices of people were clamoring. 2 people carefully carried her onto the stretcher. Be careful. Be careful of her hand, don't crush it. In the middle of the night, the flashing lights of the police cars and ambulances were dazzling. In the long corridor of the hospital, the cold lights flashed past. The doctors and nurses were anxiously pushing the ambulance bed to the operating theater without stopping for a moment. Yoon Shirshir lay on the operating table with her eyes tightly closed. The piercing pain almost made her suffocate. She could vaguely make out the dejected cries of a family member among the chaotic voices around her. Then in her daze, she heard a familiar voice. Shirshir? It was him. It hurts. She could not see anything. She reached out and was quickly held tightly by a pair of big hands. Muyaja pretended to be calm and called her name softly. Shirshir, it's me. Before he could finish speaking, the nurse pushed him aside. Sorry, sir. Please wait outside the operating theater. After that, a group of medical staff hurriedly pushed Yoon Shirshir into the operating room. Muyaja stood at the entrance of the operating theater. Behind him, Hua Jin rushed over with Yu in his arms. Shaoichen ran the fastest. He rushed to the entrance of the operating theater and raised his head. When he saw the operating theater light on, he gasped. Mommy! He walked to the door in a panic and peeked through the crack. Hua Jin immediately asked, "Brother-in-law, what happened to elder sister? We still don't know what's going on." "Sister. Her eyes were injured. I've already sent someone to investigate the details." Previously, he had sent bodyguards for her, but according to the news, she had followed the crew to the TV station for an event, and then the crew was responsible for sending her home. Hence they did not follow her. Furthermore, nothing unexpected had happened all this while. They let down their guard a little. Yun Shishir also said that there was nothing special, so they didn't follow her anymore. Thus they were on standby. "Excuse me, are you the victim's family member?" The doctor's trembling voice came from the emergency room not far away. Muyaja turned around and saw Gu Jinglian standing at the door of the emergency room. His expression was gloomy and his aura was terrifying. In the middle of the night, he had received a call saying that Gu Xingze was in trouble. He rushed over. Along the way, he felt that it was inconceivable. Trouble? How could it be? Didn't he go out for something? Chapter 2870. He said that he would not come back after returning to America. Gu Jingze had wanted to send him off, but he said that he wanted to see the most important person in his final moments. Then he disappeared without a trace. Gu Jingze did not expect to receive such news in the middle of the night when he waited for his return. He rushed to the hospital and arrived at the emergency room. The doctor asked him if he was the victim's family member. "The victim?" Gu Jinglian's face darkened. "Where is he?" "He's in the emergency room. We've already tried to resuscitate him, but he lost his vital signs on the way. There's nothing we can do to save him," the doctor said regretfully. Gu Jinglian did not believe him. "How is that possible? Quack, could you have made a mistake?" The doctor felt wronged. Even so, he explained in a low voice, "How could I have made a mistake? The victim was a very popular celebrity when he was alive. He was a popular idol. You didn't see how the nurses in the emergency room were crying so hard." Gu Xingze had lost all signs of life on the way to the hospital. Some of the medical staff recognized him in the ambulance. This nurse happened to be Gu Xingze's fan. When she saw this scene, she was stunned as if she had been struck by lightning. It was unbelievable. The idol who had announced to the public that he was quitting the entertainment industry just a day ago was now a cold body. When Gu Xingze was sent to the emergency room, many nurses swarmed over. "Oh my God! Oh my God! Isn't this Xingze? My eyes must be playing tricks on me. Or maybe, am I dreaming?" The emergency room was filled with cries. No one could believe that Gu Xingze was dead. She left this world coldly and desolately. But the most heart-wrenching thing was not his departure. It was when the doctor announced that the resuscitation was futile. When the nurses cleaned his wounds, they found that he was covered in wounds and blood. Not only did he leave alone, but he also left in great pain. Even if they weren't Gu Xingze's fans, their eyes turned red from sadness at such a bleak scene. "Get out of my way." Gu Jinglian lost his patience and pushed him away. He kicked the door open and barged in. The door was kicked wide open. Gu Jinglian walked in and was surprised to find a body covered tightly by a white cloth on a hospital bed in the emergency room. The nurses hugged each other and burst into tears. Gu Jinglian could not help but feel annoyed. He shouted angrily, "Get out of here!" A few nurses were shocked by his angry and cold expression. Under the doctor's eye signal, they left the room in groups. In the spacious resuscitation room, there was only a lonely bed left. All kinds of medical instruments were piled up at the side. At the foot of the bed, there were many blood-stained and cut clothes. Gu Jinglian walked over to the bed. He did not believe that the person under the white cloth was Gu Xingze. He could not help but reach out, pinch a corner of the white bedsheet and lift it up. Wow! Gu Xingze's pale and handsome face came into view. Gu Jinglian's eyes widened slightly. He lost focus for a moment and his pupils contracted. He was so shocked by this scene that his heart stopped beating for a moment. Xingze. Was he really dead? He was in disbelief. Chapter 2871. Uncle Fu also walked over. When he saw Gu Xingze on the bed, his eyes instantly turned red. What? What happened? He was fine, why did he? It wasn't that he didn't have feelings for Gu Xingze. Uncle Fu had served Gu Lianqing wholeheartedly in the Gu family. After Gu Lianqing passed away, He started serving Gu Jinglian. However, his heart was incomparably gentle. His heart ached for Gu Xingze and he pitied him. Gu Xingze had lived in the Gu family for a period of time. At that time only Uncle Fu could get close to him. Since he was young, Xingze's personality had been more introverted. He rarely interacted with outsiders and always sealed himself in his own world. He liked to hide in the study room and read quietly or flip through comics. The only person who could communicate with him was probably Uncle Fu. From the beginning to the end, very few people could enter his heart. Once they entered, they couldn't leave. He was obsessed with love. In Uncle Fu's eyes, although this child looked cold, he valued love more than his life. He looked at Gu Xingze's pale face and couldn't help but cry. He quickly wiped it away with his hand. Young Master Xingze, how could this be? Muyaja also walked into the emergency room. He had only planned to wait outside the operating theater for his wife. When he found out about this, he rushed over but only saw Yun Shishir lying on the operating table, covered in blood. He didn't know if the blood on her clothes was hers or someone else's, especially her eyes, which were filled with blood. When he saw it, his heart felt like it was being stabbed. What was the feeling of heartache? He wished he could take the pain for her. The eyes were the most vulnerable part of a person. The doctor said that there were many small glass shards in her eyes, which caused the corneal hemorrhage. Glass shards. How did these damn things get into her eyes? Muyaja really couldn't figure it out, but he didn't have time to investigate. He only cared about accompanying her by the bed. At that time she was unconscious, but she kept mumbling as if she was talking nonsense. He leaned closer to listen, but he couldn't hear clearly. When she finally woke up and opened her eyes, she was pushed into the operating theater. Muyaja could only force himself to calm down. If he lost his composure, the situation would be completely out of control. Right now, he had to guard her until she left the operating theater safely. He didn't care about her eyes or whether she would lose her vision. He only wanted her to live well. Even if she could no longer see, he would do everything in his power to make her see again. However, Muyaja saw Uncle Fu's his eyebrows. But when he heard him, he heard Uncle Fu's sorrowful voice, "Young master." His eyebrows twitched, and he vaguely suspected something, so he walked to the resuscitation room. However, he saw such a desolate scene. Gu Xingze lay on the hospital bed with a pale face. To be precise, this was an empty shell without any soul control. It was cold without any temperature. His body was already cold. His limbs were also gradually stiffening. His handsome face was stained with blood, but it was strangely calm. It was as if he had just fallen asleep. Normally, after suffering so many injuries, an ordinary person's expression would be extremely ferocious before they died. However, he was exceptionally gentle and quiet, as if he had left without any pain. Chapter 2872. He had never thought that the two of them would meet under such circumstances. Gu Jinglian sized him up and asked expressionlessly, "Why are you here? What happened to him?" Muyaja asked instead of answering. Gu Jinglian lowered his gaze and glanced at Gu Xingze. His expression was covered with a layer of ice. He's dead. He left peacefully. He had originally thought that he would not be affected by any accident that Gu Xingze had caused. However, he did not expect that when this family member left, Gu Jinglian's heart would still ache a little. Gu Xingze was dead. His heart was heavy. Gu Jinglian suddenly narrowed his eyes. Who did it? Old master. Who did it? Gu Jinglian gripped the armrest tightly, his gaze vicious. Who did it? Uncle Fu immediately said, I just understood the situation. It said that the culprit has already been detained. It's a woman. The other accomplice was already dead when he went to the crime scene because of a fatal wound. A woman? Gu Jinglian frowned. A woman? A woman. Muyaja also expressed his doubts. Uncle Fu immediately said, It said that before young Master Xingze went abroad, he wanted to see Miss Yun Shishir one last time. He was probably attacked on the way to the appointment. Did he offend any enemies? Gu Jinglian's expression turned even colder. I remember that he didn't offend anyone. How could he be attacked for no reason? All these need to be carefully investigated by the police before they can come to a conclusion. I've already sent people to put pressure on the relevant departments. I believe that they will be able to come to a conclusion soon. Muyaja frowned and suddenly asked, "Did you find out the woman's name?" When Uncle Fu heard this, he and Gu Jinglian turned to look at him. After struggling for a while, he said slowly, "I only know that it was a young woman with a slightly damaged face. Her surname is Yun and her name is Na. That's all I know." Muyaja was stunned, and the muscles on his face tightened. Yun Na. It was actually this woman. He narrowed his eyes and guessed what was going on. Bang! A loud sound was heard. The door of the resuscitation room opened wide. Hua Jin was startled by the sudden movement. He stood up immediately, only to see Muyaja walk out with a stern expression. He strode in front of him and instructed, "Stay here and guard her well." "What happened to you? You look like you're in a hurry. Where are you going?" Hua Jin was a little confused. Muyaja said, "I have something very important to deal with." "What?" Before he could finish his question, Muyaja didn't have time to say much to him. He only instructed him to guard the resuscitation room and take care of Yun Shishir first. Then he turned and left in a hurry. A number of police cars were parked at the entrance of the hospital. After escorting the injured and taking their statements, the police officers were about to return home. Muyaja followed them closely in his car until the police car entered the police station. He parked his car and rushed into the office hall. At a glance he saw Yun Na, whose hands were handcuffed. Chapter 2873. Muyaja did not recognize her at first glance, but he inadvertently discovered the hideous and terrifying scars on her face. He vaguely remembered hearing Yu and Shishir mention that Yun Na's face was cruelly disfigured by Lu Jingtian because she had offended her. She used an eyebrow shaver. Her face was cut until it was dripping with blood. Muyaja furrowed his brows and walked closer to her. Yun Na was trembling all over. She lowered her head and mumbled incoherently as if she was possessed. He did not know what she was mumbling about. Muyaja's handsome brows sank slightly. He did not know what exactly had happened. By the time he arrived at the hospital, Yun Shishir and Gu Xingze had already lost their lives on the way to the hospital. One was blinded, while the other had lost his life on the way to the hospital. What exactly had happened? He did not know. However, he could vaguely guess that it had something to do with Yun Na. Muyaja's face was dark and furious. He did not know that Yun Na was still alive, nor did he know that Yun Yeqing's accident had something to do with her. He also did not know that Lu Jingtian's burns were caused by Yun Na. She had returned from hell like a malicious spirit, seeking revenge. After the 3 police officers in charge of this case registered the case, they walked over with the records. When they saw Muyaja standing at the side, they were stunned for a moment. Clearly they did not know who he was. "What are you doing?" The officer in charge was the first to ask. Muyaja glanced at him and then said coldly, "I'm the victim's family member." "The victim's family member?" The officer glanced at him and then at Yun Na. He suddenly reacted. "You're Yun Shishir's family member?" "Yes." "Who are you to her? What's your identity?" "Husband." "Zhang." The police officer was stunned. Naturally, they were no stranger to Yun Shishir. The movie that she starred in broke box office records, and the TV series that she starred in had a rising viewership rating. The public now knew that her husband was the former chief of the Mu Group and the founder of the Xingyu Financial Group, Muyaja, after the catfight between her and Ji Yan had caused a huge uproar in the city. Therefore, when they heard that he was Yun Shishir's husband, they immediately knew the man's prominent identity, and their attitude immediately became respectful. "So it's President Mu." The 3 police officers looked at each other and smiled awkwardly. Muyaja glanced at Yun Na once more, and he noticed her eyes were staring fixedly at a certain spot as if she was in a world that she'd sealed off. Her body was swaying back and forth, and her expression was dull while she ceaselessly muttered something. "What is she talking about?" Hearing his question, one of the police officers immediately smiled and said, "Please wait a moment, I'll go over and listen." Another police captain immediately stopped him. "Don't go, be careful not to get caught by her." He didn't know if this woman was really crazy, or just pretending to be crazy. On the way back to the police station, she was so paranoid, as if she was possessed. Could it be that she's mentally ill? If she's mentally ill, we'll have to test her. Wuxia immediately glanced at him coldly, and the man immediately stopped talking. President Mu, do you have any instructions for us? Wuxia sized up Yuna with a gloomy look and then ordered, go through the bail procedure for me. This? Bail. Chapter 2874. The three of them were well aware of the situation. If Wuxia wanted to bail someone out, he didn't need to ask for their opinion. However, it was indeed too brazen of him to go through the bail procedure without even interrogating the criminal. I'll give you 20 minutes to go through the procedure. Wuxia glanced at his watch expressionlessly, then looked up and said coldly, my time is precious. The three of them couldn't help but be deeply shocked by his gaze. They shuddered and looked at each other. At the hospital, the emergency room was crowded with people. News of Gu Xing's accident spread like wildfire among the media, probably due to the hospital's insiders leaking the news. Many media outlets, upon learning that Gu Xingza had met with an accident and his life was in doubt, went to the hospital to wait for him after finding out which hospital he was sent to. Huan Yu also received the news from the Gu family, and sent Ji Lin and Qin Zhou to rush over. Qin Zhou was the first to arrive at the hospital and hurriedly entered the morgue. In the huge morgue there was only one bed. This was a room that the hospital had specially emptied to store Gu Xing's body. Soon, someone rushed over to take care of Gu Xing's body. When Qin Zhou arrived, Gu Xing's clothes had already been removed and the bloodstains on his body had just been wiped clean. However, the wound was still a ghastly sight. Just as he walked to the door, he saw Gu Xingza lying quietly on the bed. He was stunned as if he had been struck by lightning. His mind went blank for a few seconds. Qin Zhou immediately reacted and rushed to the bed in a panic. However, all he saw was Gu Xingza's deathly pale face. Xingza. He called out Xingza's name sorrowfully. However, the most frustrating thing was that the man on the bed didn't respond to him anymore. Xingza. Qin Zhou's heart sank to the bottom. On the way here he was burning with anxiety. He only hoped that the news was false. Perhaps in the process of passing on the message had been misinterpreted. How could a person who was alive just a second ago suddenly die for no reason? Qin Zhou was clearly in disbelief. But when she rushed to the hospital and saw Gu Xingza, she was shocked to find that all this was not fake. Xingza really, he left. Qin Zhou rarely shed tears. His personality had always been more cheerful. Even if something pessimistic happened to him, he wouldn't feel sad. However, after encountering this matter, he suddenly became weak. His eyes immediately turned red, and tears suddenly fell onto the pure white blanket. He wept bitterly. Xingza, didn't you say you were flying to America? What is this? He suddenly stretched out his hand and touched the ghastly wounds. Tears streamed down his face. Where did these wounds come from? Earlier, you said that you would contact me as soon as you arrived in the U.S. I thought you were already sitting in the first-class cabin to the U.S. He immediately hugged Gu Xingza's shoulders. His heart was filled with pain, but he did not know how to vent it. Quickly get up and tell me that this is a joke. You're joking with me. Okay, you win. I was fooled by you. Xingza, don't close your eyes anymore. Open them and look at me. Chapter 2875. Gu Xingza had been in the entertainment industry for many years. Qin Zhou and he were very close. Their relationship was so close that most people would find it unreasonable. Many media outlets even speculated that the two of them were gay. They said that Qin Zhou and Gu Xingza did not cheat on each other, and that their sexual orientation was not normal. However, in fact, it would not be appropriate to use the phrase close as brothers to describe the relationship between the two of them. Qin Zhou saw Gu Xingza as family, while Gu Xingza saw him as a lighthouse. If it were not for Qin Zhou's support in his 11 years in the entertainment industry, it would have been difficult for him to reach such a glorious position. However, he was more grateful to Qin Zhou because this man understood him and understood him. He was also the only person who could walk into his heart. Qin Zhou obviously could not accept this reality. He held Gu Xingza's face and pressed his forehead against it. However, he could only feel the coldness from deep within his skin. There was no warmth. He was no longer around. leaving behind such an empty shell. No matter how he called out to him, he would never wake up again. Qinzhou gripped the bedsheets tightly in pain. He obviously could not accept such bad news. Gu Jinglian stood at the side and watched this scene. His face also softened a little. The separation of life and death was enough to deeply affect anyone with a heart of stone. Jilin also arrived quickly. Many of Huan Yu's executives followed closely behind. Jilin walked to the door and instructed them to wait at the door before he walked in. When he walked to the bedside and saw the scene, his entire face twitched. What's going on? Qinzhou looked at him with reddened eyes. His lips could not help but tremble. Jilin saw him and frowned. However, he could not bear to reprimand him. He only said, "Pull yourself together. We still need you to follow up on the follow-up matters. He is my most important friend. Over 10 years of friendship is more important than family." Qinzhou choked. How can I not be sad that he's gone? How can I not be sad? You told me to pull myself together, but how can I pull myself together? Sigh. Jilin sighed helplessly. Qinzhou, there are media outside the door. I've already sent people to seal off the hospital, but I'm afraid it'll be difficult to stop those media. Last time, paparazzi sneaked into Lu Jingtian's morgue to take photos of her body and publish them online. I don't want such a thing to happen to Xingzi. Qinzhou clenched his fists tightly. The news of Xingzi's death should be announced to the public. This matter has already spread like wildfire among so many people in the hospital. We won't be able to keep it a secret for long. A minute. Qinzhou cursed angrily. Which bastard spread the news? Xingzi is very popular and has a very high national profile. He can cause a commotion on the streets. There are definitely many people who would recognize him, especially those nurses. On my way here I saw many nurses crowding around the door, looking around with red eyes. I'm afraid they want to come in to pay their respects. Qinzhou immediately declared, no outsiders are allowed to enter this place. So, I'll need you to settle the rest of the matters. At least. Don, okay, I understand. Qinzhou pulled himself together and straightened his body. However, when he looked at Gu Xingzi again, the corners of his eyebrows twitched again. He could not bear to see it, but he could not bear to look. He could not bear to. He really could not. Chapter 2876. He wanted to take a few more good glances, but the more he looked, the sadder he felt. He really couldn't accept such a cruel fact. Was Xingzi really dead? Soon, like those who had died, he would turn into a small pile of ashes in the funeral parlor and be buried in a dark grave, never to see the light of day. Qinzhou suddenly felt very sad, and he couldn't stop his tears. He wasn't a weak person, but now that he deeply understood that Gu Xingzi would never come back, he felt the heart-wrenching pain of losing a close friend. Qinzhou tried to restrain himself again and again before he forced himself to stand up. He gently reached out to close the superstar's eyes, which had not been tightly shut. Didn't you always say that you wanted to have a good sleep? Qinzhou looked at him and frowned, but he forced a smile. Now you can have a good rest. Leave the rest to me. He turned around and slowly walked away. When he reached the door, a few of Huan Yu's executives looked around inside. Qinzhou stopped them. Don't look. As he spoke, he closed the door behind him. What happened to Xingzi? We received news that Xingzi had an accident. What happened? Qinzhou glanced at them with a blank gaze and said casually, Xingzi is asleep. Don't wake him up. This? The executives looked at each other, obviously not knowing what was going on. However, most of them were smart. When they heard Qinzhou's words, they roughly confirmed their guesses. Gu Xingzi was gone. He was in a deep sleep forever. He had been in the entertainment industry for 10 years, and had always been the most dazzling star. Now he was really like a shooting star falling into the galaxy. Xingzi is asleep. Don't wake him up. He used to complain to Qinzhou that he couldn't sleep well at night. Qinzhou knew that his mental state was very poor and was very worried. He knew very well that Gu Xingzi had been in the entertainment industry for more than 11 years. For many years, he was always flying around the world to rush to work, so his sleep condition was very bad. Furthermore, it was accompanied by severe neurasthenia and depression. All along it had been accompanied by medication. He had announced his retirement from the entertainment industry because of Yun Shirshir. More importantly, his personal doctor had repeatedly advised him to go to America for treatment of his depression. Gu Xingze also gave up. However, the announcement of his withdrawal from the entertainment industry was too sudden and caught Qin Zhou off guard. Why did he fall in love with Yun Shirshir? It was probably because Yun Shirshir was the only ray of light that could expel the darkness in his heart. However, there were some things that could not be forced. He really couldn't force it. However, he had thought of countless possibilities regarding his future. Perhaps he would be cured of his depression in the United States. Perhaps in a foreign country, he had met a suitable girl and was in love with her. Perhaps in 2 years, he would marry the woman he loved, have children, and live a peaceful life. However, no matter how much he thought about his future, he would never have thought that he would be met with such grievous news. How could he accept this? Qin Zhou only thought that he was asleep. Perhaps to him this was a form of relief in disguise. The dead could not be brought back to life. He only hoped that he could rest quietly. Chapter 2877. Even though it was late at night, many media outlets rushed over after hearing the news. They waited outside the hospital door stubbornly, waiting for the breaking news at the first opportunity. There were even worse media outlets who didn't care if they found out the truth of the matter. To protest Huan Yu's decision to lock down the hospital, they burned incense at the entrance of the hospital. There were also media outlets who secretly posted the news online. Soon there were self-media outlets on Weibo that published such news. Gu Xingze jumped to his death due to depression? This headline was too sensational. It quickly attracted the attention of many fans. But how could the fans believe the media's one-sided story? There were no photos, no concrete evidence, and no official announcement. Naturally, the fans wouldn't buy it. They would treat it as a publicity stunt. Hence, a large number of fans quickly gathered under the Weibo account to hurl insults and accusations, accusing the unscrupulous media of making groundless accusations and inciting malicious rumors. Rumors. This was a rumor. Soon, this Weibo post was trampled on by Gu Xingze's army of fans. Within a short span of 10 minutes, it attracted hundreds of thousands of fans and tens of thousands of comments. It caused such a sensation that the Weibo server was paralyzed. The technical department dealt with it urgently, and the blogger was so frightened that he immediately shut down the comments function. Many fans had a frighteningly accurate sixth sense. They probably felt that this Weibo post was too sensational and there was no official announcement, so they panicked and felt that something must have happened to Gu Xingze. Hence, they went to Gu Xingze's Weibo and begged him to clarify the rumors. Gu Xingze's last Weibo post was still an announcement about Gu Xingze's withdrawal from the entertainment industry. The fans were eagerly anticipating. But what the fans didn't know was that this Weibo account would never be updated again. No matter how much the fans cried in the comments section, Weibo remained silent. Hua Jin had been standing guard at the entrance of the operating theater. As he was worried about Shirshir, he was completely distracted. Yu Yu and Xiaoyichen were also extremely anxious. They didn't rush over immediately, so they didn't know what was going on with their mommy. However, the door to the operating theater kept opening and closing, and a group of nurses came in and out in a hurry. They didn't know what was going on. Then a nurse in a pink uniform walked in. Hua Jin stood up with a look of shock on his face. Pink uniform. In this hospital, the only nurse who wore a pink uniform was from the gynecology department. He watched helplessly as a few gynecological nurses rushed in, and the door of the emergency room slammed shut again. Xiaoyichen was on the verge of tears. What should we do? Would mommy be in any danger? It's been so long, why haven't they come out yet? I'm so scared. Yu Yu immediately shouted at him. Don't talk nonsense. Mommy will be fine. Ugh. Xiaoyichen's face was filled with tears. He felt extremely wronged. Qin Zhou, who had just walked out, heard Xiaoyichen's voice and walked over curiously. When he saw that they were there as well, he was even more confused. Why are you guys? Qin Zhou. Hua Jin jumped to his feet. Qin Zhou was Shirshir's manager. Seeing him, his anxious heart finally calmed down temporarily. Hua Jin, you. Shirshir is in the middle of an emergency surgery. Chapter 2878. When Qin Zhou heard Hua Jin mention Gu Xingze, His expression darkened and he frowned. Xingze is gone. Hua Jin was stunned for a few seconds. He quickly understood what he meant by gone. How could that be? He was in disbelief. When Yu heard this, she hurried over and asked, Uncle, what did you say? Uncle Xingze is gone. Aha. Qin Zhou suppressed his grief and said in a low voice, Let him rest well. He's been through a lot all these years. Both of them fell silent. Yu also looked regretful. Qin Zhou recalled what Hua Jin had said earlier and was suddenly jolted awake. What did you say? Shirshir is in the operating theater. What's wrong with her? She was sent in with Xingze. I don't know the details. I didn't come early, but I heard that her face was covered in blood. I don't know where she was hurt. When Qin Zhou heard this, his expression turned serious. Why didn't you call me to inform me? I thought you knew. Hua Jin was a little annoyed. I saw you entering the hospital just now and hurrying off in another direction with a group of people. I thought you knew about Shirshir's matter, but I didn't expect Xingze. How long has Shirshir been in the operating theater? About 2 hours. Then, did you inform Chairman Mu? Hua Jin immediately said. He was the one who informed me first. After that, he said that he had something urgent to attend to and left first. He asked me to stay here and take care of her. Why isn't Daddy back yet? Shaoichen mumbled in confusion. Yu immediately said. He probably had something important to attend to, and didn't have time to explain it to us. Qin Zhou suddenly felt troubled. In just one night, both of them had met with mishaps. He still didn't know how to handle Gu Xingze's matter, or how to announce this bad news to the public. If the fans knew about this, they would definitely be devastated. However, he couldn't hide it for long. Many people in the hospital had seen Gu Xingze's remains, and knew that Gu Xingze was dead. Even if Huan Yu did not make any official announcement, the news would spread like wildfire. At that time, it would inevitably be a little tricky. Qin Zhou had to consider this carefully. But now that something had happened to Yun Shirshir, he felt even more depressed. Hua Jin was so anxious that his forehead was covered in cold sweat. Qin Zhou immediately comforted him. Don't worry, since you stay here to guard her. If you lose your sense of propriety, who will take care of Shirshir? How can I not be worried? It's been so long and he still hasn't come out. Hua Jin was about to cry. Qin Zhou was about to say something. However, the door to the emergency room was suddenly pushed open. The nurses pushed the door open and walked out with a tray in their hands. On the tray was a gauze stained with blood. Hua Jin was frightened when he saw this. He immediately went up to the nurses and asked, Nurse, what's going on inside? The nurse looked him up and down and asked, Are you her family member? Yes. Hua Jin nodded solemnly. The nurse asked a little angrily, The patient is pregnant. Did you know about this? What? Hua Jin was shocked and Qin Zhou was even more stunned. Yu and Shaoichen were even more frightened when they heard this. Chapter 2879. The nurse asked angrily, The patient is pregnant. Did you know about this? What? Hua Jin turned pale with fright, and Qin Zhou was stunned. Yu and Shaoichen turned pale with fright when they heard this. Shaoichen's eyes widened. What? Mommy is pregnant. Yu was also stunned. The nurse sized them up and was puzzled by their surprised expressions. It can't be, right? The patient is already 7 weeks pregnant. You didn't know about this. Hua Jin frowned and said worriedly, We didn't know. Because she hasn't had any abnormal reactions recently, such as vomiting. We haven't seen her having any morning sickness. Not everyone will have morning sickness. Some pregnant women don't have such reactions. Moreover, it's only 7 weeks. It's still so early, so there might not be any morning sickness. However, there are obvious differences between pregnant women and ordinary people. For example, they are especially sleepy. After the nurse finished speaking, Yu immediately asked, Nurse, how is mommy? Is her life out of danger? You said that she's pregnant. Then, is the baby in her stomach safe? His face was full of anxiety and worry. The nurse saw that he was cute and sensible. She immediately squatted down and patted his head gently. She smiled and said, Your mommy's life isn't in danger. Xiao Bao in her stomach is also fine. However, her eyes are injured, so her vision might be a little impaired. It's fine as long as she's fine. What everyone didn't know was that even though Yun Shirshir had fallen to the ground, she had been tightly protected in Gu Xingze's arms. During the worst fall, Gu Xingze had used his entire body to protect her and took all the damage for her. Hence, the baby in Yun Shirshir's arms was fine. As long as she's fine. The most important thing was that Xiaobao in Mommy's stomach was safe. Daddy doesn't know about this, right? If Daddy knew that Mommy was pregnant, he would probably be excited, nervous, and worried, wouldn't he? She must be worried sick. He had originally planned to immediately tell his father about this matter. However, after careful consideration, if his father were to find out, he didn't know what to do. However, as long as Mommy is not in danger, that's good. Yu Yu's heart had just calmed down when she suddenly realized something. She frowned again and asked in confusion, "Nurse, what do you mean by Mommy's eyes are injured and her vision is impaired?" Hua Jin also said nervously, "Yes, nurse. I also want to ask, what do you mean by eye injury, and to what extent is vision impairment?" During the operation just now, a lot of glass fragments were removed from the patient's eyes. These glass fragments entered the eye and pierced the cornea, causing a great deal of damage. The human cornea is very fragile, but it has the ability to repair itself. However, if the injury is serious, it may cause permanent loss of vision. Permanent loss of vision? Hua Jin raised his eyebrows and questioned, "Can you take it as blindness?" "You can put it that way. If you want to recover your vision, you can only consider a cornea transplant." The nurse hurried away. Hua Jin and Yu Yu looked at each other, their morale low. Xiao Chen, who was beside them, only understood half of what was going on. However, he vaguely heard the phrase permanent loss of vision, and was quite shocked. Chapter 2880. Yu Yu was dumbfounded. Blindness? How could that be? The three of them lowered their heads, each with mixed feelings. He was happy that her life was no longer in danger. At least she was fine. More importantly, the flesh and blood in her stomach were finally safe. They were worried that Yun Shirshir's cornea was seriously damaged. The glass was very hard, and the cornea was not damaged at all. Her eyes were so fragile that they couldn't even tolerate sand, let alone glass shards. Hua Jin's heart ached. Yu Yu, on the other hand, gritted his teeth in hatred. Mommy wouldn't have done something like this for no reason. Someone must be behind this. Someone must have done something to her. Who did this to Mommy? After Yu Yu thought about it, a person's face suddenly appeared in his mind. Yan Bingqing. Yu Yu clenched his fists as he locked onto Yan Bingqing's face. No matter how smart he was, he would never have guessed that the culprit behind this incident was Yun Na. He had no idea that Yun Na was still alive and had returned to the capital. Not too long ago, Ji Yan and his mother had quite a bit of dispute. Later, when he investigated Ji Yan's background, it confirmed his conjecture that Ji Yan was Yan Bingqing. He was furious at the thought of this. Little Munchkin was certain that Yan Bingqing was the one who had harmed his mommy. Therefore, he hated her to the core. He immediately walked to the side, took out his phone, and dialed Li Hanlin's number. In the middle of the night, Li Hanlin was awakened by the phone call. When he learned of the matter, he immediately agreed to send someone to detain Yan Bingqing, who was also Ji Yan. When he returned to the operating room after the call, Qin Zhou was already busy dealing with Gu Xingze. The door of the operating room happened to open. Yu Yu immediately rushed forward and saw a group of nurses and doctors pushing an operating table out in a hurry. Hua Jin immediately rushed over. Yu Yu and Xiao Chen also ran over to the operating bed. They held onto the edge of the bed worriedly and looked at the patient lying quietly on the bed. Yun Shirshir lay on the surgical wound. Her body was straight, and her face was as pale as a sheet of paper. Her eyes were covered by white gauze, but the blood that seeped through the gauze could not be covered. Hua Jin was even more worried when he saw it. Yu Yu and Xiao Chen were especially heartbroken. The local anesthesia was used for the surgery, and the effect of the anesthesia wore off very quickly. As soon as she stepped out of the operating theater, Yun Shirshir suddenly reacted. She grabbed the bedsheets tightly and tried to open her eyes. However, the sticky marks at the corners of his eyes seemed to have glued his eyelids together. It hurt when he opened his eyes. She clenched her teeth in pain and reached out instinctively as if she wanted to grab onto something. Yu Yu wanted to reach out, but Hua Jin was one step ahead of him and held her hand tightly. Sure, it's okay. I'm here, it's okay. Xingze. Yun Sure instinctively said a name that shocked him. Hua Jin was stunned. However, he heard Yun Sure ask anxiously with a sobbing tone. Xingze. How is Xingze? Her voice sounded very weak and weak. Even so, she still stubbornly wanted to know if Gu Xingze was safe and sound. Hua Jin bit his lip. He did not know what had happened at that time, but now was not the time to find out. They had just come out of the operating theater, so the first thing they should do was to have a good rest. Sure, don't think too much for now. You'll be in the ward soon. Have a good sleep and don't think about anything. We'll talk about it when you wake up. Chapter 2881. Yun Sure persisted. Where's Xingze? I want to see him, I want to see him. See him? Even the doctor couldn't bear to listen to this. Miss Yun, your eyes can't see normally now. If you want to see anyone, you have to wait until your eyes recover. My eyes aren't important. What's important is, seeing that she couldn't communicate with them normally, Yun Sure tried to get up. Hua Jin immediately held her down. Sure, listen to me. Don't mess around. In your current condition you can't get out of bed at all. Why didn't you tell me about Xingze's condition? Yun Sure turned her head to him. Her lips were trembling and extremely pale, as if they had been brushed with a layer of powder. Is he? She suddenly reached out and grabbed Hua Jin's wrist tightly. A tear quickly flowed down along with a light amount of blood. Is he okay? Please tell me. Hua Jin couldn't bear to tell her the truth. At the side, Yu mustered his courage and said, Mommy, don't ask anymore. I just heard that Uncle Xingze has fallen into a deep sleep forever. The child had a delicate mind and wasn't good at using such a cruel word like dead. To him, deep sleep was probably an acceptable way of saying it. When Yun Sure heard this, her expression froze. Her body froze as if she had turned into a fossil and she didn't move at all. All of a sudden she laughed. Apparently she didn't think so. Impossible. He can't be dead. You're lying to me. Seeing her like this, Yu's heart ached so much that he almost suffocated. He would rather suffer such pain than see his mommy trapped in such a cruel hell. It's impossible for him. It's impossible for him to die so easily. Yun Sure's lips suddenly parted into a smile, but the expression on her face was very hollow, as if it would completely collapse in the next second. Everyone noticed her abnormality, probably because it was hard to accept such a sudden change. Hua Jin's heart ached as he covered the back of her hand and comforted her. Sure, don't be sad. The most important thing right now is to think about how to take care of yourself. How can I not be sad? Without any warning, she started to cry hysterically. It's all my fault. It's all my fault. No. I want to see him, I want to see him. Even if it was the last time, Yun Sure got up abruptly. The operating table was still moving. She jumped off the bed without thinking and fell to the ground. The retention needle in his hand fell off, and blood splattered all over the floor. She didn't care about the pain from the fall and hurriedly got up from the ground. She stood up with difficulty and her hands fumbled around randomly. When Hua Jin saw this, he immediately rushed forward and hugged her shoulders. Sure, calm down. Can you calm down a little bit? Don't be like this, don't punish yourself like this. Yu and Xiaoichen also rushed over and each held one of her arms. Mommy, don't scare Yu. Don't force yourself, okay? If Uncle Xingze was still alive, he wouldn't want to see you like this. I'm guessing that Uncle Xingze must be trying to protect Mommy. Uncle Xingze must be relieved that Mommy is safe and sound. So Mommy, don't let Uncle Xingze down. Chapter 2882. If it weren't for me, he wouldn't have died. It's all my fault. Yun Sure was utterly defeated and burst into tears. Yu's heart ached when he heard that Uncle Xingze was dead. He was even more worried that Mommy would live in guilt forever. In this world, the heaviest and most unbearable thing was guilt. He was grateful for Gu Xingze's sacrifice, and his heart ached for Uncle Xingze's devotion to Mommy. However, his heart ached even more for Mommy, who would forever live in self-blame. Yun Sure pursed her lips and her tears fell uncontrollably. She choked and said, At least let me see him one last time. At least let me see him again. It's okay if I can't see him. Hua Jin took a deep breath and said, Okay. I'll think of a way. 20 minutes later. Hua Jin helped Yun Shishir to the door of the morgue. Based on Qin Zhou's verbal instructions, the two of them were let in as usual. Yu Yu and Xiaoichen were left outside. Yun Shishir couldn't see anything. Hua Jin helped her to a place and stopped in his tracks. She knew that the place beside her was probably where Gu Xingze was parked. Yun Shishir sucked in a breath of cold air. Only then did she reach her hand in slowly. Her fingertips came into contact with a frightening coldness. It was so cold. It was unbelievable. Why would a person's skin become so cold after losing their body temperature after death? Touching such cold skin, Yun Shishir found it even harder to suppress the pain in her heart. Tears were about to fall again. Xingze. Thousands of words escaped from her throat, but it was filled with guilt. I'm sorry. She collapsed to the ground weakly and knelt by the bed. She fumbled around and grabbed his curled hand. His slender fingers were extremely cold, without any warmth. She grabbed his hand but she couldn't get anything in return. Her heart was filled with anticipation. In the next second he quietly held her hand. Then, he sat up from the bed and smiled mischievously. He scratched her nose and told her, I'm just teasing you, little fool. She would never be angry. However, all these seemed to be wishful thinking. She knew that he would never wake up again. But she still had a lot to say to him. Thousands of words were stuck in his throat. He couldn't say them, and it was hard for him to swallow them. Xingze. Yun Shishir sobbed. Wake up, just give me a few seconds. I just want to tell you that I will never forget you. Will you forget me? In your heart, will you retain even a second of my memory? Of course, of course. Yun Shishir was extremely regretful. She shouldn't have said that and let him misunderstand. However, she thought that if she said that, he would close his eyes unwillingly. Unexpectedly, he believed her and left with regrets. She couldn't bear to. She wanted to tell him, I won't forget you. Xingze, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yun Shishir said humbly, I'm willing to use 10 years of my life in exchange for a glance from you. Open your eyes and look at me, okay? When Hua Jin saw this, he couldn't bear it. He thought that the name Gu Xingze would probably be engraved in her heart forever. He reached out to hug her, but he heard her cry even more heart-wrenchingly. Xingze. When he heard her cry, his heart felt like it was being stabbed. Chapter 2883. Don't be sad, okay? My heart aches when I see you like this. Yun Shishir could not stop crying and sobbing. She did not seem to be the type of person who would cry to the heavens and the earth. She clung to the edge of the bed and gripped the bedsheets tightly, crumpling them into a ball. She gritted her teeth and tried to hold back her tears, but she could not control them at all. It was as if the world had completely collapsed. One look and one could tell how desperate she was at this moment. She kept feeling that everything in front of her was a dream. She cried enough and woke up from her dream. When she woke up, Gu Xingze was still alive. However, every time she closed her eyes, the scene in the parking lot would replay itself. Every time she thought about how Gu Xingze was in her arms and how he struggled to open his eyes and say those words with great difficulty. His weak but smiling expression seemed to say, Shishir, please don't be sad. I don't regret it. However, she regretted it. She was sad. She would break down. She did not believe that Gu Xingze had died just like that. He had really died just like that. She also did not believe in the nonsense that people would go to heaven after they died. When people died, they really did not exist anymore. However, there were so many beautiful things in this world that he had never experienced. His life should not have come to an abrupt end just like that. When he flew to America, it might have been the beginning of a new life. He might have welcomed a new life with a girl who loved him and he loved her too. The two of them met, got to know each other, fell in love and finally held hands for the rest of their lives. In her heart, Gu Xingze had always left a beautiful image of her. He deserved to be happy, he deserved to be happy. But now? It was just as Gu Xingze had said. He came to this world coldly and lived coldly. In the end, he fell asleep coldly and was alone for the rest of his life. Yun Shishir was crying like a madwoman. She was crying in despair. Even though she didn't cry herself hoarse, she was on the verge of collapse. Hua Jin finally couldn't take it anymore. His eyes reddened as he knelt down beside her and hugged her shoulders. He hugged her tightly and said painfully, "Sister, if I can bear it for you, I'm willing to bear it for you. But don't force yourself like this, okay?" Hot tears fell on her shoulders. Hua Jin also began to cry sadly. The dead cannot be brought back to life. No one would have expected such a thing to happen. I know that Senior Xingzi likes you and cherishes you in his heart. Even if he were to do it all over again, I think he would still make the same choice. However, he definitely doesn't want you to punish yourself like this. It's not your fault. Why don't you let yourself go? Let yourself go? She cried and shook her head, unable to say a single word. She cried and so did he. She cried because she was sad that Gu Xingzi had left. He cried because he suddenly realized that Gu Xingzi would definitely become a thorn in her heart. This thorn would probably never be removed, and with every breath, the pain would be deep in her heart. However, he definitely couldn't allow her to continue crying like this. Not to mention her eyes, he couldn't let her tears fall. It was because he was worried about the unborn fetus in her stomach that he couldn't let her cry like this. Hua Jin hardened his heart and immediately used his hand as a knife. Yun Shirshir only felt a pain at the back of her neck. Her vision suddenly turned black and she fainted. Chapter 2884. Hua Jin's heart ached as he gently caressed her face and rested his hand on her forehead. His heart ached terribly. When she was sad, he was sad too. The more she cried, the more he wished he could die for Gu Xingzi. She wouldn't be that sad, would she? Just as he was letting his imagination run wild, there was a loud bang behind him. Muyaja broke through the door. Shirshir. He rushed through the door and saw the person in Hua Jin's arms. He was stunned and rushed over to take her from Hua Jin's arms. Shirshir. Muyaja gently caressed her face. It was terrifyingly cold and there was no sign of life. He couldn't help but frown. He looked up and asked, "What's wrong with her?" "Brother-in-law, don't worry. She's just fainted temporarily." Hua Jin immediately explained. "She insisted that she wanted to see Senior Xingzi one last time, so I brought her here. But perhaps she couldn't accept reality, so she kept crying. I was worried that it would affect her body, so I knocked her out with a karate chop. She'll wake up after resting for a while." Upon hearing this, Muyaja glanced at the person lying quietly on the bed. Gu Xingzi's eyes were closed quietly. The clothes on his body had been removed, and a white bedsheet covered up to his shoulders. His appearance had been tidied up. At first glance, it looked as if he had only slept for a short while. It was extremely quiet. Usually, people who died from serious injuries would die in an extremely hideous manner because of the immense pain. However, Xingzi's expression was very calm. No one knew what kind of dream he was having. Muyaja suddenly felt complicated. He didn't know how to feel about Gu Xingzi. In the past, he probably only felt disgust towards him. But after this incident, he couldn't bring himself to hate this love rival of his. He had always thought that Gu Xingzi's feelings for Yun Shirshir were just a spur of the moment, or that he was restless because he couldn't get her. Men's desire to conquer women and their careers were the most obvious. The more he couldn't get someone, the more intense his desire to conquer them would be. Muyaja thought that Gu Xingzi's feelings for Yun Shirshir were purely driven by his desire to conquer her. But she didn't expect this man's love to be so deep. He was actually willing to sacrifice himself. However, he couldn't care less right now. Muyaja carefully carried Yun Shirshir in his arms and left in a hurry. Hua Jin followed closely behind. Yu and Xiaoqian followed closely behind. When they arrived at the intensive care unit, Muyaja gently placed her on the bed and covered her with a blanket. Hua Jin also heaved a sigh of relief. "How is she?" Muyaja immediately asked. Hua Jin immediately repeated what the doctor had said. Finally, he observed Muyaja's expression and said slowly, "Shirshir is pregnant. Do you know?" "She was pregnant." Muyaja suddenly turned his head and looked at him with a pair of sharp eyes. He seemed to be suspicious. "What did you say?" Hua Jin patiently repeated. "She was found to be pregnant. The doctor said that she's about 7 weeks pregnant." Muyaja's entire body stiffened. He turned his head and looked at Yun Shirshir. His eyes were filled with emotions and his expression was complicated. Pregnant. She was pregnant. This news made him both surprised and happy. However, he was still worried. Chapter 2885. He was worried that her emotions would be too unstable, and she would not be able to make it through the first 3 months. The first 3 months were the most dangerous time for a pregnant woman. If she did not take care of the fetus well, the fetus would stop developing and might not even have a heartbeat during the first 3 months. Based on her emotions, if she continued to drip, the fetus would die prematurely. When that happened, it would be a huge blow to her. She was afraid that she would be sent straight to hell. Hua Jin seemed to have guessed what he was worried about and hurriedly comforted him. But, fortunately, the fetus is fine. If she recuperates well, her condition should be stable in a few weeks. Muyaja leaned on the bed and held her hand with heartache. He stabilized the back of her hand and gently pecked her fingertips. "She will get better," he said softly. It was not clear if he was comforting Hua Jin or Yun Shishir. In the ward, when Yun Shishir woke up, her eyes were covered with heavy gauze. She could hear the doctor and Muyaja talking in a heavy tone. Muyaja sat by the bed expressionlessly and listened quietly. It was so quiet that there was almost no sound. Hua Jin stood beside him and listened attentively. His face was filled with nervousness and worry as he looked at the doctor anxiously. On the other hand, Yu and Xiaoichen looked grave. Hua Jin looked haggard as he did not have a good night's rest. Muyaja looked the same. The doctor buried his head in writing a report, but his face was not as cold as a doctor. He carefully sized up Yun Shishir, who was lying on the bed, and looked at Muyaja with trepidation. He said with some regret, "Mr. Muyaja, your wife's cornea was damaged by a sharp object. As a result, her eyesight is damaged and there is a high possibility that she will lose her sight." Hua Jin did not look too good after hearing that. His face was ashen, but he still had a glimmer of hope and asked tentatively, "Doctor, what do you mean? What blindness?" The doctor raised his head. Behind the thick lenses, there was a helpless look in his eyes. His tone was calm. "It means that her vision value is only 0.03. Her eyes have almost lost all vision and cognition. She can only slightly perceive light." Hua Jin blacked out. Yu, who was standing at the side, staggered and almost lost his balance. Yun Shishir had already woken up. When she heard this conclusion, she could not help but clench her fists. Her throat tightened. At that moment, his heart almost fell into the abyss of despair. She couldn't see, but she could clearly feel Muyaja holding her hand tightly, his fingertips trembling slightly. She also heard Hua Jin's heartbroken question. "Then Shishir's eyes can't be treated? Can't be cured?" "Not necessarily. If cornea transplantation can be considered, the sooner the better. After all, it is difficult to find donors in the medical institutions in China. Even if a suitable donor is matched, the surgery may not be successful. So you have to be mentally prepared. However, considering that she is pregnant, the surgery can't be rushed. After all, as a pregnant woman, there is still a lot of risk in the surgery." On the bed, Yun Shishir's body suddenly froze. "What? Pregnant? Pregnant woman?" These words were so unfamiliar. What did they mean? She was full of doubts and forced herself to listen to the doctor more carefully. Chapter 2886. On the bed, Yun Shishir's body suddenly froze. "What? Pregnant? Pregnant woman?" These words were so unfamiliar. What did they mean? She was full of doubts and forced herself to listen to the doctor more carefully. Earlier, the doctor had said those words intermittently, so she didn't really listen. She only vaguely heard a few words. Cornea transplant. Pregnant woman. There was a huge risk in the surgery, however. This series of words was enough to shock her and make it difficult for her to digest. Was she pregnant? Yun Shishir was so nervous that her whole body tensed up. Muyaja sensed the hidden meaning in the doctor's words and couldn't help but frown. "What do you mean?" The doctor deliberated for a moment and observed his expression. Suddenly, he said slowly, "My suggestion is that you can keep the child, but it might affect the cornea transplant surgery. After all, cornea donors are hard to come by. If you miss the opportunity, you might have to wait for a long time. In this way, if the surgery is delayed, you will inevitably feel regretful. Or you can keep the eye, abort the child as soon as possible, and perform the cornea transplant surgery as soon as possible. This is a safer plan." The doctor's cold words were still in their ears. However, those cold words undoubtedly pressed on their hearts, making the entire ward feel like it was covered in a layer of frost. Muyaja looked up and glanced at him. His tone was a little dangerous. Abort the child? Yes, the doctor said seriously. With her physical condition, the chances of her having children in the future are still very high. If the child is gone, she can have another one. However, if the cornea donor is missed, it's not something that can be obtained just because she wants it. Muyaja suddenly stood up and rushed to the doctor. He grabbed him by the collar and pressed him against the wall. The doctor only felt the back of his head hit the cold wall. His brain shook. When he opened his eyes again, he met Muyaja's cold and deep eyes. He couldn't help but be shocked. The cold gaze made him shudder. The doctor suddenly felt his hair stand on end. He was so scared that his voice trembled violently. Mr. Mu, let's talk nicely. Let's talk nicely. Muyaja coldly curled his lips and asked fiercely, whose child do you want to abort? Speak. Muyaja's blood had clearly rushed to his head. The cold aura on his body had completely spread throughout the ward, extending to every corner. The middle-aged man, who was almost in his 40s, was almost suffocated by Muyaja's dangerous gaze. Chairman Mu, please don't misunderstand. I'm doing this for your wife's sake. Is this for her sake? By aborting the child, you're forcing her to her death. Muyaja tightened his grip on his clothes. If he wasn't trying to control himself, he might have unconsciously strangled him. The doctor wanted to cry but had no tears. But, although it's cruel, these two plans are the most reliable. I warn you, don't even think about touching the child. The child must be saved. Right now, she couldn't bear another heavy blow. The doctor was so scared that he nodded repeatedly. Muyaja loosened his grip on the man, and the latter immediately scrambled out of the ward. Huajin vaguely heard movement from the bed. He turned his head and saw that Yun Shirshir had woken up. She sat up and gently leaned against the back of the bed. Shirshir, you're awake. When Muyaja heard that, he looked back in shock but met her cold eyes. Chapter 2887. When Muyaja heard this, he turned around in shock and met her cold eyes. She couldn't see anything. She could only vaguely make out a black silhouette in the hazy light. However, this silhouette was too blurry. She didn't even know who this silhouette belonged to. Muyaja walked towards her slowly until he was right in front of her. He sat down on the side of the bed and leaned closer to her. Yun Shirshir was indifferent and didn't react at all. She couldn't see him. She couldn't even see him walking towards her. Muyaja held her hand tightly. It was so sudden that she was startled and her body curled up slightly. It's me. He comforted her gently and placed his hand on the back of her hand. Shirshir, do you feel better? He asked tenderly. Are you feeling unwell? When Muyaja saw that she didn't say a word and was extremely quiet, his eyebrows furrowed even more. His heart ached as he kissed her fingertips. His throat was slightly hoarse. Shirshir, don't scare me. It's okay that you can't see. You still have me. But don't keep quiet. Yun Shirshir opened her mouth, but her throat was hoarse from crying and she couldn't make a sound. Yu and Xiaoqin came over and stood on both sides of the bed. They looked at Yun Shirshir worriedly. Mommy, say something. Yu choked and said, it's okay now. Yu, Xiaoqin, Daddy, and Uncle Huajin are all here to protect you. We won't let you get hurt again. Children were sensitive and knew that the person who had regained consciousness was probably still in a daze and was still in a state of panic. He comforted her immediately and hoped that she wouldn't be afraid again. Yun Shirshir couldn't help but clench her fists. She bit her lip and lowered her head. The first words that came out of her mouth were 3 words. I'm sorry. Everyone was stunned. Huajin walked over and said angrily, why are you apologizing for no reason? I'm sorry. Yun Shirshir only cared about apologizing and kept saying, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I can atone for my sins in any way. I can even exchange my life for it. I'm sorry. Muyaja couldn't stand it and hugged her tightly. Shirshir, did you hear what the doctor said? Our child is in your womb now. Yun Shirshir's eyes gazes and couldn't help but feel suffocated. Child? It turned out that what she had heard earlier was Was she really pregnant? Maybe it's a little princess, or maybe it's a mischievous little fellow. No matter if it's a boy or a girl, I like them all. I love them all. Hearing this news, I was pleasantly surprised. Oh. As he spoke, he hugged her shoulders and gently kissed her trembling lips. That's why you have to take good care of your body, okay? I'm sorry. Don't say sorry again. Muyaja's tone was full of pleading. You didn't do anything wrong. No one blames you. Don't say sorry. I don't want to hear it. Hua Jin also said, Sure, did you hear that? You have a Xiaobao baby. The baby is in your womb now. Chapter 2888. Yu added, but it's still very young, so we can't tell if it's a boy or a girl. It'll be great if it's a little princess. Daddy has always wanted a little princess. Xiaoichen said. Daddy said that he'll love both boys and girls. Yu immediately added. His clear eyes looked at Yun Shirshir's tummy with curiosity and love. Then he said gently, I'll love Xiaobao a lot too. Mommy, I swear that I'll be a gentle brother and take good care of little sister. Xiaoichen teased. How do you know that it's a little sister? Oh, it's probably telepathy. Yu grinned and said, I'm guessing that the baby in Mommy's tummy is a little sister. Who asked Daddy to always want a little princess? Don't you like little sister too? Xiaoichen blushed strangely. Then he murmured, Yeah, I want a little sister. Although Yun Shirshir could not see, she could still imagine the two children's expectant gazes when she heard that. Muyaja gently placed his hand on the back of her hand and called out to her gently. Shirshir, you still have me, Yu and Xiaoichen. You also have a 7-week-old baby in your tummy. She's very lucky and strong. The doctor said that it's a miracle that she was able to survive under such terrible circumstances. Yun Shirshir's heart skipped a beat. She's very lucky. She's very strong. Yun Shirshir's lips suddenly trembled. Her voice trembled as she said, At that time the car almost hit me and ran me over. She couldn't help but recall that scene. As she held her cell phone, she felt the oppressive high beams of the car behind her blinding her eyes. If Gu Xingze hadn't pushed her to the side at the critical moment, she would have been crushed under the wheels of the car. Even though Gu Xingze had pushed her to the ground, he had taken all of her weight. Gu Xingze had pulled her into his embrace and used his back to take all the impact. Hence, the moment they landed on the ground, she clearly felt Gu Xingze's breath drop as he sucked in a painful breath. If it weren't for him, she wouldn't have been able to keep the baby in her tummy. If it weren't for him, she would have been rolled over and over by Yun Na's car dozens of times. How much did Yun Na hate her? Even when he was talking to her, he was gnashing his teeth in anger. He wanted nothing more than to turn into a ferocious beast, tear her into a million pieces, and chew her into his stomach. She didn't care about the consequences of her actions. She didn't care about the law. What she wanted was a life for a life. Yun Na had always had the intention of perishing together with the enemy. Even if she died and was punished by the law, she wanted to drag them down to hell. Yun Yeqing was a good example. He was her biological father. She actually had the heart to splash him with sulfuric acid, and concentrated sulfuric acid at that. How cruel must she be to think of such a cruel method? What if it wasn't Gu Xingze? Chapter 2889. If it wasn't for Gu Xingze, I would have been the one lying on that bed right now. Yun Shirshir clutched her chest in pain as tears rolled down her cheeks uncontrollably. Her heart ached so much that she couldn't breathe. She wasn't that fragile and didn't like to cry, but she just couldn't stop feeling sad. She really couldn't do it. She couldn't force herself to smile and live well after losing Xingze. This was too cruel. Too cruel, she choked and said. He could have escaped. He knew that they had guns and bullets didn't have eyes. But he didn't run. He didn't have to protect me. That way he wouldn't have been stabbed so many times. He still had a chance to live. Why did he end up like this? Muyaja hugged her with heartache as his eyes reddened. His heart ached terribly. Other than hugging her tightly in his arms and trying to feel her heartache, he couldn't say anything else. Hua Jin choked and said, Sure, don't keep thinking about this. Since it's already happened, let's turn the page and let bygones be bygones. The dead are gone, and the living are still alive. Xingze is no longer around, so you have to cherish him even more. He must want you to be well and not torture yourself. But I can't figure it out, I can't understand. Yun Shirshir couldn't stop crying. I can't understand and I don't want to understand. I just want him to come back. Don't cry. Muyaja lowered his head and kissed her injured eyes through a layer of gauze. Shirshir, don't cry. Sleep well and don't let your imagination run wild. Huh. Don't let your imagination run wild. He knew that asking a heartbroken person not to cry and not to shed tears when they were in incomparable pain was crueler than cutting them into pieces. But she couldn't cry anymore. Every time her tears flowed out of her eyes, it was undoubtedly adding salt to the wound. He didn't want her to suffer this pain anymore. Yu rubbed her eyes and tried hard not to cry, but every time she saw her mother in pain, her heart ached even more. Everyone was flustered. After much difficulty, they finally managed to soothe her to sleep. After she fell asleep, the ward finally returned to silence. For a moment it was quiet. Only then did the nurses enter the ward. The needle on her wrist had been removed, so she had to switch to another hand for the 4-drip. Muyaja kept hugging her as he lay on his side on the bed while she snuggled up in his embrace, using his arm as a pillow. Even though half his arm was numb from having to rest for a long time, he still couldn't bear to let her go. Just like that he hugged her, guarded her and looked at her. Yun Shirshir did not sleep well. From time to time her breathing would become rapid. Perhaps she was having a nightmare. But no one knew what she was dreaming of, for her forehead to break out in cold sweat. Yu fetched a basin of hot water and squeezed the towel dry. Then she carefully wrapped the towel and helped her wipe off the cold sweat. Xiaoichen stood by the side and quietly covered her with the blanket. The three of them had a clear division of labor. Huajin was tired after watching over her for the whole night and the whole morning. Hence he lay on the bed to rest. He planned to wait until nighttime when Muyaja was tired so he could take care of Shirshir for him. Chapter 2890. In the afternoon, Yun Shirshir finally fell asleep. Huajin also woke up. The 4 of them didn't dare to leave for too long. They were hungry so they ordered takeout. Huajin didn't know what to order. After consulting their opinions, he finally decided to order fast food. Firstly, it was fast. Secondly, it was hygienic with meat and vegetables. They were all starving. Even though Muyaja didn't say anything, he didn't eat breakfast or lunch. His stomach was growling. Huajin was a little nervous. He didn't know if Muyaja, with his noble status, would take a liking to the food he ordered. After all, he had a net worth of hundreds of billions. He rarely ordered fast food. Unexpectedly, when the food was delivered, he personally carried the lunchbox to the table like an ordinary person. He distributed the chopsticks and spoons one by one, held the lunchbox and ate elegantly. It was Huajin's first time seeing a man eat so elegantly. He was like a noble. Even though he was holding an ordinary lunchbox, it gave him the feeling of a gentleman eating in a noble restaurant. Wasn't this man too perfect? Huajin muttered in his heart. He didn't even know how to hold the chopsticks next to him. Muyaja lowered his head and ate with heavy thoughts. Yun Na had been released on bail. He didn't pay much bail, and the police station didn't dare to take too much. The police station didn't have time to record this case, so it was perfect to cover it up perfectly. Yun Na was a missing person in the household registration center. As long as her records were erased, she would be a missing person without any news. The reason he bailed Yun Na wasn't because he wanted to do anything, nor was he planning to let her go. Instead, he planned to handle this matter personally. It wasn't that he didn't believe in the law. He believed that with the seriousness of the law, Yun Na's case should at least be a heavy death sentence. Moreover, what kind of sensational effect would the news of Gu Xing's death cause? This criminal case would definitely not be reduced to a simple one. Even though Huan Yu was still trying hard to keep this matter under wraps, they wouldn't easily announce the news of Gu Xing's death before the PR draft was released. Even though Gu Xing's fans were tormented by their guesses, it was impossible for them to announce his death so soon. However, he did not believe that the law could give him a satisfactory trial. Sometimes, when dealing with evil, using violence to curb violence was the only way to be fair. At night, Yun Shirshir still hadn't woken up. There were nutrients and tranquilizers in the intravenous drip. Since she hadn't woken up, Muyaja decided to go to the company. He had rushed over in a hurry and put down the board meeting that was halfway through. At this moment, matters big and small had probably piled up into a mountain. He had to assign tasks as soon as possible. Hence, he urgently summoned Lu Jinyu and Jiang Shan to the office. For the next few days, he had to stay in the ward until her emotions were stable enough. The company's affairs would be put aside for the time being. Hua Jin would take care of Yun Shishir on his behalf. However, not long after Muyaja left, Hua Jin finished washing the dishes and returned to the bedside. Suddenly, he heard hurried footsteps coming from the corridor. The heavy footsteps were fast and powerful. He thought that Muyaja had left something in the ward. He looked up at the door. The next second, the door was pushed open forcefully. A Gongjia, who was dressed in black, pushed the door open and walked in nervously. Chapter 2891. Gongjia, who was dressed in black, pushed the door open and walked in nervously. Why was it him? Hua Jin was extremely surprised to see him. There was no other reason. From what he remembered, Gongjia had always liked white things. He had a head of silvery hair, a white suit and pants, and a white trench coat. This was something that left a deep impression on him. Most people who liked white had misophobia and were extremely picky about cleanliness. Gongjia was a misophobe to the point of being perverted. However, today he was dressed in black. His trench coat was not like before, where it was simply draped over his shoulders. Instead, it covered his entire body, as if he was trying to hide something. Gongjia pushed the door open and walked in. He immediately saw Yun Shishir lying quietly on the bed. He looked nervous for a while and immediately rushed to the bed. "Sis," Hua Jin immediately said. She finally fell asleep. "Don't wake her up." Gongjia looked at him and immediately stopped talking. All of a sudden, Hua Jin noticed a subtle movement. From the moment Gongjia entered the room until now, he had been holding his left shoulder with his right hand. His originally handsome and devilishly handsome face was now extremely pale, as if he was enduring something. God knew that when Yun Shishir's phone was crushed by the car wheels and could no longer be reached, he did not care that he was still injured and was still recuperating. He immediately arranged for a flight and rushed over. Even though he was very resourceful, he was able to find the hospital where she was hospitalized without much effort. After finding out the ward, he rushed over. The hospital's elevator was always very congested. He could not wait for the elevator and ran all the way up the stairs. His forehead was still covered in sweat. When he ran, his movements affected the position of his wound. The wound probably split open a little and some blood seeped out, sticking to his clothes. This was also the reason why he deliberately changed into black clothes. If he wore white clothes once the wound split open, it would be immediately obvious. Gongjia sat on the side of the bed and leaned over to look at her. As soon as he entered the ward, he saw that Yun Shishir's eyes were covered with 2 layers of gauze, and there was a trace of blood seeping through. He couldn't help but be shocked. Gongjia turned his head abruptly and questioned Hua Jin. "What happened to her eyes? Are you hurt?" "Shoo!" Hua Jin immediately signaled him. "Don't be too loud." If it were any other time, if Hua Jin dared to order him like this, Gongjia would definitely explode. He would even flip the bedside table. Alas, he had always been cautious when it came to Yun Shishir's matters, so he immediately lowered his voice obediently. "Is her eye injured?" Hua Jin's lips twitched. He felt that no matter what it was, as long as it involved Yun Shishir, Gongjia would immediately turn from a mighty lion to an obedient and cute cat. This contrast was a little too great. Hua Jin immediately explained. "Her eyes are hurt, but other than that she's mostly fine." "Eyes? Hurt? What exactly happened?" Gongjia was halfway through his words when Yu walked into the ward from the balcony. Shaoichen also walked in. The 2 little lads washed their towels and hung them up to dry. When they saw Gongjia, they were stunned. "Uncle?" Chapter 2892. Let's not bother about this for now. Gongjia was not in the mood to explain this. He only wanted to know what was going on with the 2 layers of gauze on Yun Shishir's eyes. Yu and Hua Jin looked at each other. From Hua Jin's words, Gongjia roughly understood what had happened last night. Yu explained again. Uncle Xingza was stabbed 4 times in the abdomen and waist to protect mommy. 2 of the wounds were fatal, and he went into shock due to excessive blood loss. In the end, when he arrived at the hospital, He had already lost all signs of life. As for Mommy, because of an accident, glass splashed into her eyes and cut her cornea. She might not be able to regain her normal vision for a while. Xiaoichen's heart ached as he said. Mommy cried so hard because of Uncle Xingze. No matter how much we coaxed her, it was useless. She's probably sad. The doctor repeatedly reminded her not to cry or shed tears, but no one could persuade Mommy. It wasn't easy for Daddy to coax Mommy to sleep, but she hasn't woken up yet. When Gongjie heard this, his heart ached so much that it was about to bleed. He walked to the bedside and leaned over slightly. Looking at Yun Shirshir's sleeping face, his slender fingers gently stroked the gauze. The bleeding spot made his heart clench. Perhaps it was because they were twins. He could completely empathize with the pain that she could endure. He could feel her despair, her helplessness, her loneliness, and her pain that she had no one to vent to. All of this was difficult for ordinary people to understand. After all, the needle wasn't pricked on their own body, so they wouldn't know how painful it was. However, he had a magical sense. He could sense all of her emotions. After all, before they were born, they were already protecting each other. How long is she going to sleep for? His voice was soft as he couldn't bear to disturb her. I hope that Mommy can sleep a little longer. Otherwise, if she wakes up and keeps crying, it won't be good for her body. Her eyes are already like this, she can't cry anymore. Besides, if you keep crying, it won't be good for the baby in your tummy. Little Yichen added solemnly. Gongjie was stunned. When she heard Xiaoichen's last sentence, she couldn't help but fall into a daze. What? What baby? For a moment he did not understand what was going on. Yu said from behind, Uncle, Mommy is pregnant. There's a 7-week-old Xiaobao baby in her stomach. She's pregnant? A look of surprise appeared on Gongjie's face when he heard this. Yes, the doctor said that Mommy was 7 weeks pregnant. I also felt that it was strange. During that time, Mommy's reaction was indeed a little abnormal. It was said that when she was filming on set, she had vomited a few times. I thought she had such a reaction because she was tired from filming. Yu was a little annoyed. He should have reacted in time, but he was careless. He only hoped that Mommy would give him and Xiaoichen a little sister, so he didn't connect her abnormal reaction to the pregnancy. Gongjie's gaze fell on her face. He doted on her. He even doted on the baby in her stomach, which was not even 2 months old. Fortunately, the heavens doted on her and the baby didn't die prematurely. It was saved. Thinking of this, Gongjie's heart was more or less comforted. It's good that the baby is saved. Chapter 2893. After Gu Xing's death was pushed back 48 hours, many fans could no longer hold it in. They found out the address from somewhere and ran to the entrance of the hospital to wait. At this moment it was already raining heavily. The downpour came suddenly and fiercely. Even so, it was difficult to extinguish the anxious hearts of the fans. Many fans rushed to the scene and found that the entrance of the hospital was already guarded by many media reporters. The hospital was brightly lit and was in a state of alert. Many people also realized that the hospital's security had been strengthened. The hospital had even deployed a lot of police officers from the Ministry of Public Security to maintain order at the scene. The fans were not stupid. The abnormal situation at the scene reminded them that the thing they were most uneasy about might not be a groundless accusation. Could it be true? Did something really happen to Master Xingze? Impossible. How could it be true? I don't believe it, I don't believe it. Many fans waited for the official news for a long time. They were in a state of panic the entire night. Obviously, they were extremely afraid. At the same time at Huanyu's headquarters, the meeting room was brightly lit. Tonight was destined to be a sleepless night. Many of the higher-ups had expressions on their faces. Jilin sat in the chairman's seat. Beside him, Qinzhou looked exhausted, but he still looked extremely serious. I believe everyone knows about Xingze's matter. Right now, everyone is facing the biggest public relations crisis. First of all, this matter hasn't been investigated clearly. Before the truth is found out, we must not act rashly, and we must not announce to the media what happened. As for the media, Qinzhou will be in charge of handling it. This time, no matter the price, we must suppress the storm as soon as possible. Many media reporters suspected that Xingzi had offended someone from the underworld, so he was assassinated. Assassinated? Qin Zhou glared. Nonsense. One of the higher-ups found it funny and said, offended the underworld. These media outlets didn't even ask around about the Gu family's background. How did they deduce such a ridiculous statement? Qin Zhou said unhappily, there's no need to say anything else. Some ridiculous statements are not worth responding to at all. Many media outlets are clowns who make fun of the public. In order to attract the public's attention, they don't even care about the most basic professional ethics. Yes, I understand. After an entire night of intense meetings, the next day, 3 days after Gu Xingzi's death, Huan Yu finally released official news. This time, however, it wasn't released through Weibo. In order to show the solemnity, Huan Yu directly published an obituary in the largest media and announced the news on their official website. The obituary was brief. The gist of it was that Gu Xingzi had met with an accident on his way to meet his friends. He had passed away in the wee hours of the previous night. The obituary was carefully worded and mournful. At the same time, it announced that there would be a grand memorial service in 2 days at Hongyang Funeral Parlor in Beijing. Many artistes had already secretly expressed that they wanted to participate in the obituary. Chapter 2894. At first, the fans thought that it was a prank by the company, an April Fool's Day prank. Many fans were deceiving themselves, unwilling to believe that the obituary was real. They even went to Huan Yu's official website to leave comments, scolding the website for being black-hearted, for using such malicious words to create hype. Gu Xingzi said he was going to study for a master's degree in America. I think it must be a malicious attempt by the company to create hype. Although Gu Xingzi set up his own studio, he was still affiliated with Huan Yu. Now that he has left Huan Yu, such a big money tree has collapsed. The company won't let it go so easily. That's why they created such a damaging hype. They want to take advantage of Gu Xingzi's declining reputation to create more hype. This is too much. Just because Gu Xingzi insisted on leaving the entertainment industry, they can't disregard their years of friendship and do this, right? Xingzi is so pitiful. To be accidentally killed for no reason at all, how unlucky. However, the fans' self-deception was quickly slapped in the face. When many media outlets reposted the obituary on their official Weibo accounts, many A-list celebrities immediately stepped forward to repost it and post their condolences. Especially the directors and big-name producers who had worked with Gu Xingzi before. All the fans were scared out of their wits by this huge memorial. Just when they were still holding on to a faint glimmer of hope, Gu Xingzi's former manager stepped forward and posted a memorial obituary on Weibo. Goodbye, Xingzi. Once upon a time when I first met you, I was stunned. I only thought of you as a handsome young man who had walked out of a painting. Melancholy yet beautiful. You had a cold temperament that was hard to find in ordinary people. But your eyes revealed arrogance and loneliness. The first thing I wanted to do was to sign you. I think you're a rare talent. Some people were born to be the center of attention. Like you. In fact, time gave me the best answer. In the 10 years since your debut, as long as your name was mentioned, it was the best evidence. You were the idol of your generation, a fashion superstar, a genius in acting, and the youngest best actor of your generation. You were an irreplaceable legend. I was proud of you. I was proud of you. However, at this moment I suddenly regret my decision. Perhaps if we hadn't met back then and you hadn't stepped into the entertainment industry, you wouldn't have fallen so quickly like a shooting star. Xingzi, do you know? Once upon a time, what was my expectation of you? I hope that you can win the most outstanding celebrity award, the world's best male artist award, the best actor award at every prestigious film festival, and the world's attention. I wish you were the king. I hope you become a legend that can never be surpassed. But, do you know what hope I have right now? Right now, I just want you to come back. It didn't matter that he was no longer the heavenly King Xingzi of the past. It didn't matter if he didn't have the glory and halo. It's good that you're back. It would be even better if you could start your life all over again. Even if these are difficult to achieve, even if you live well, breathe the fresh air, look at the beautiful blue sky, and sleep well where no one will ever disturb you. How long has it been since you had a good rest? 1 month? 10 months? It was still 10 years. Chapter 2895. Many people think that being a superstar idol is extremely lucky. With a high income that ordinary people can only dream of, they enjoy an elegant life that ordinary people don't even dare to dream of. But your life has never been elegant. You're lonely. You can't sleep well, even if it's just a normal night's sleep. You can't eat a proper meal. My heart aches for you. My heart aches to the extreme. I still remember that night when the bad news came. I rushed to the hospital, but I could only see your sleeping face. I was heartbroken. How many decades do we have in life? The 10 years between us is not something that can be measured by mere numbers. This period of time is the most unforgettable period of my life. Yes, you left. You left this world without hesitation and fell into a quiet sleep. I cried and called your name, but you didn't give me an impatient look like before. The dead can't come back to life. The dead are gone, and the living are still alive. I didn't sleep well the whole night. But now I'm relieved to think that you can finally sleep well. No one will disturb you again. But Xingze, why is fate so unfair to such a gentle person like you? Goodbye, Xingze. I only hope that if there's a next life, we'll be lucky enough to meet again. This emotional long Weibo post was written from the bottom of his heart. Many fans cried in despair when they saw it. They cried not only because they were reluctant and touched, but also because they knew that Gu Xingze's departure had become a reality. Xingze was gone. Xingze was really gone. Many fans thought that after Gu Xingze left America, his manager colluded with the company to tarnish his reputation. However, these conspiracy theories were quickly debunked under the evidence of other fans. My sister is a nurse at that hospital. She's also a veteran fan. She's a nurse in the emergency room. She said that 2 days ago, Xingze and Yun Shishir were sent to the hospital at the same time. Yun Shishir's eyes were injured, and Xingze was stabbed several times. 2 of the stabs were unknown, and 3 of the stabs hit his vitals. He stopped breathing on the way here. Apparently, the friend that Xingze met was Yun Shishir. He didn't expect to be attacked by criminals on the way. In order to protect Yun Shishir, Xingze was stabbed when he resisted. I heard about it too. I was still in the hospital at that time, and many paparazzi had already caught wind of the news and were waiting outside the hospital. At that time, all the security guards of the hospital were present, and many police officers were transferred from other police stations to prevent the paparazzi from sneaking into the hospital. Many rumors spread among the fans. Some of Gu Xingze's fans came from powerful backgrounds. Although they did not have access to everything, it was not difficult for them to find out which hospital Gu Xingze was in. Many fans believed it to be true. When Huan Yu published the obituary, all the celebrities reposted it. However, Yun Shishir, who had a lot of interaction with Gu Xingze, was the only one whose Weibo was deserted. Many fans scolded her for not caring. They said that she deserved Gu Xingze's protection and flattery. When such a big thing happened, she did not express her thoughts at all. There were also many fans who stood on Yun Shishir's side. They argued that Yun Shishir was probably too sad to post anything on Weibo. A person's attitude could not be easily measured by a word or two on Weibo. Chapter 2896. However, there were also nurses from the hospital who came forward to expose. What? Yun Shishir can't post on Weibo because she's still recuperating in the hospital. To think that Xingze protected her so much and even lost his life for her. At this moment, she was found to be pregnant. Great, now that she's pregnant, she can rely on her son's status again. The family is overjoyed, but poor Xingze is lying alone in the cold morgue, and she doesn't even look at him. Once this Weibo post was posted, it quickly became the headline. In fact, not only had Yun Shishir woken up long ago, she had also visited Xingze twice. However, both times she had secretly gone when no one was around. She knew that the memorial service would be held in 2 days. At that time, Xingze would be cremated and buried. She felt as if her heart was being torn apart when she thought about how a person who was once alive was about to turn into a thin wisp of bone ash. She only wanted to spend the little time she had left with him. When Yu saw this Weibo post, he was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. However, he did not dare to tell Yun Shishir. At 6 in the evening, Yun Shishir sat on the bed and ate fruits with a numb expression. Mu Yaja was reviewing the company's financial report while eating bread. Gong Jia had also been guarding the ward for the past few days. When Yun Shishir woke up and saw him, She was a little surprised and shocked. She was so surprised that she did not mention Yun Yecheng's matter. When she was covering her forehead, she was not in the mood to care about his health. Her heart was in a mess. When she first woke up, she refused to eat anything. Gong Jie persuaded and begged her in every way possible before she finally drank some millet porridge. When Mu Yaja returned, the two men were in the ward. One was innocently begging her to drink Chinese medicine, while the other was trying his best to coax her. Only then did she obediently eat her food. It was not enough to rely on nutrient solutions alone. Only by eating on time could she ensure that her body was supplied with nutrients. After all, you are not alone now. Gong Jie reached out and patted her head, his eyes full of affection. For the sake of the little guy in your belly, you have to grit your teeth and eat it. Yun Shishir listened to him and obediently cooperated. After dinner, Yun Shishir gently wiped her lips with a wet towel and said calmly, I want to go to Gu Xingzi's memorial service. Upon hearing this, the man turned to look at her in surprise. What? Mu Yaja also looked up at her. Mommy, you can't walk around now. You can't go anywhere. Yu said immediately. Yun Shishir curled her lips, as if she had known that they would not allow it. She said helplessly, I'm just going to a memorial service. Are you not allowing it? Without waiting for Gong Jie to speak, Mu Yaja immediately said, There will be many fans at the memorial service. Not only fans, but there will also be major media outlets and A-list celebrities. The memorial service venue is very big and can accommodate thousands of people. This is only the inner venue. When the time comes, the outer venue will definitely be surrounded by fans. You are now at the cusp of the storm. You shouldn't go. I'm only going to see him for the last time. Yun Shishir emphasized again and again. Can't I do that? No. Mu Yaja was resolute and resolute. Chapter 2897. Gong Jie said solemnly, Sister, you shouldn't go. There will be a sea of people at such an event. Even if you don't get squeezed, bumped, or hurt, I'm afraid that you won't be able to control yourself. If you start crying, who will be able to stop you? Also, you can't see. How are you going to see him for the last time? Yun Shishir's eyes reddened when she heard this. Xiaojia, can you go with me? Even if I can't see him for the last time, I'll send him on his last journey. Gong Jie couldn't bear to reject her plea. He looked at Mu Yaja and then at her. He sighed and said, Even if I agree, brother-in-law might not agree to let you go. Moreover, your eyes aren't big enough to see anything. If you get hurt, even if brother-in-law doesn't feel bad, I will. Gong Jie, who was usually as unruly as a lion, was acting like a spoiled child to him. Mu Yaja glanced at him from the corner of his eyes before nodding in satisfaction. This was probably one of the rare things that he and his brother-in-law could agree on at the same time. Yun Shishir felt even more desolate when she heard this. Her lips trembled and she said in a trembling voice, Xiaojia, if I don't see him for the last time, I won't be able to forgive myself. I only hope that I can be by his side in his last moments. Even if I don't say anything, I can just stand there silently from afar. Gong Jie looked at Mu Yaja awkwardly. Mu Yaja didn't insist. Seeing how persistent she was, he took a deep breath and smiled. If you insist on going, then I have a condition. Let me accompany you, okay? Okay. As long as she could go, she would accept any condition. Mu Yaja wanted to accompany her because he was worried that something might go wrong on the way. Even if something happened, he would feel at ease if he was by her side. At least, she wouldn't be so helpless if she encountered danger again. Since Yun Shishir was hospitalized, very few people came to visit her. It was not because she was not popular, but because very few people knew that she was hospitalized. She didn't tell anyone that she had an accident and was in the hospital. Other than Gong Jie, Huajin, Qinzhou, several senior executives of the company, and Director Ji Lin, almost no one knew about it. No one came to visit, so it was rather peaceful. Instead, she would be able to sleep better. Mu Yaja agreed to accompany her to Gu Xingzi's memorial service, which made her feel extremely gratified. Before the memorial service was held, Qinzhou led some people to pack up Gu Xingzi's belongings. When Qinzhou was packing up his belongings, he accidentally found his patient's medical report. Medical records? He opened it and read it. Despite the doctor's own scribbling, he could still make out that his condition was worse than he had imagined. Severe anxiety and insomnia? Along with the medical records, there was also a diary. Gu Xingze never had the habit of keeping a diary, but after reading the first entry, Qin Zhou guessed that the doctor had probably asked him to write this diary. From the diary, he found out that he hadn't slept well for more than half a month. Qin Zhou suddenly realized that Gu Xingze hadn't slept well for a long time since his last visit. His complexion was extremely pale, and it took a lot of effort to put on makeup. Chapter 2898. However, the media that went to visit him found out that he was using a body double, so they used him as a big shot to hype up his news. As a heavenly idol, Gu Xingze's every move would be the center of attention. What the media wanted was a hot topic and exposure. As the center of attention, Gu Xingze's psychological burden became heavier. The doctor told me to write a diary, to record the beautiful details of my life, even if it was a small detail. However, I realized that I don't even have a life of my own. My every move is under the eyes of others. How can there be beautiful details? My dream is to be able to fall asleep when I close my eyes and wake up naturally. If I leave, please don't lock me in that cold tomb. If one day I really turn into a pile of ashes, please let me embrace freedom. Qin Zhou closed the diary and did not force himself to finish reading it. The more he read, the more suffocated he felt. He continued to pack until he found a video camera and a stack of documents in the drawer. When he opened the documents, he was surprised to find that Gu Xingze had already drafted his will and distributed his assets. All the rules and regulations were clearly laid out, and they had all been notarized. Gu Xingze had a lot of assets in Beijing. Other than a few ridiculously expensive prime real estate, he had invested in and developed these real estate. Naturally, other than the real estate, the company's shares had also been divided in advance. Villas, resorts, entertainment centers, production companies. As an artist, Gu Xingze had a high income. These high incomes were all used for investment. His life was not full of luxury. On the contrary, compared to other male stars, his life could be described as pure and simple. Qin Zhou did not know why he had signed so many documents in advance. What kind of health condition did he have that made him sign so many documents in one go? In his account, half of the 9-figure assets were used for public welfare. Gu Xingze had already signed the documents for the division of assets. What made Qin Zhou even more heartbroken was that Gu Xingze's inheritance list included him. A commercial office building in the CBD was under his name. What surprised him even more was that he had actually signed the volunteer donation form. He flipped it open and glanced at it. His pupils violently contracted. Unknowingly, in the blink of an eye, the day of the memorial service arrived. For some reason, perhaps even the heavens felt pity for him. Early in the morning, the sky began to drizzle. The entire sky was gray and the world was dark and damp, as if it was also crying for him. At 10 a.m., the fans arrived at the memorial hall. However, only a few hundred fans were allowed to enter the memorial hall. Moreover, they were only allowed to enter the main entrance. They were not allowed to enter the memorial hall. However, there were still many loyal fans who rushed over from various places and waited outside the door in the drizzle. The sky was dark and the fans were standing guard outside the door. Soon, the funeral car carrying the coffin slowly drove into the funeral parlor. The fans immediately guessed that Gu Xingze's body was in the hearse. Before the fans came, they had made an agreement with each other that they must abide by the rules of the venue, obey the instructions, and not cause any unnecessary trouble for the memorial service of their beloved idols. Chapter 2899. However, there were also fans who couldn't control their sadness. It wasn't until the funeral car passed by them that the fans collectively burst into tears, as if the world had collapsed. There were even crazy fans who went up to hit the car door and wailed, "Xingze, don't leave us. Xingze, wake up." Everyone was infected by the desperate and helpless cries as tears streamed down their faces. The memorial hall of Beijing's Hongyang funeral parlor had been fully decorated. Many celebrities sent wreaths. Many celebrities came to offer their condolences. Most of them were artistes who had worked with Gu Xingze before, and they offered their condolences. At 8 o'clock in the morning, many celebrities rushed to the scene in their nanny vans. It was unknown if they were sincere or if they were just putting on an act. It was as if they were trying to match the atmosphere. Regardless of whether they were male or female, they all burst into tears. After all, attending such an occasion with fans and the media present, if they didn't shed a single tear, they would be reported as cold-blooded by the media and accused by the fans of having a heart of stone. This was especially so for Lin Ji. Even though she wasn't on the invitation list for the memorial, she knew that this was a rare opportunity to create hype. Gu Xingza's memorial service was extremely sensational. More than 100 media outlets would attend, and there would be overwhelming coverage. If she were to participate, she would definitely be able to gain a lot of exposure. Of course, she had to put on an act. Her acting skills were not bad to begin with. It was not difficult for her to shed a few tears. Therefore, as soon as she got out of the nanny van, Lin Ji covered her face with a handkerchief. Her eyes were red, and her emotions had been brewing on the way here. After getting out of the car, she was supported by her assistant as she cried all the way to the memorial hall. Qin Zhou stood at the door dressed in black. When he suddenly saw Lin Ji walking towards the memorial hall, he was stunned for a moment and quickly gritted his teeth in anger. This Lin Ji, even at this time, she still didn't forget to create hype. When Lin Ji walked to his side, he warned her fiercely, "Since you're uninvited, please don't cause trouble at the memorial service. Otherwise, I'll definitely ban you." Lin Ji was shocked by Qin Zhou's threatening words. She said aggrievedly, "I'm sincerely here to send Xingzhe off. I've always respected Senior Xingzhe for so many years. That's for the best." After Qin Zhou finished speaking, he no longer looked at her. Lin Ji patted her chest lightly, wiped her tears guiltily, and walked into the venue. Outside the door, the fans followed the arrangement of the venue staff and lined up. There were only 20 minutes left before the memorial service began. Some of them couldn't help but discuss among themselves. "Do you think Yun Shishir will come today?" "I think so." After all, she had starred in her first film with Gu Xingza as the male and female lead. Moreover, they had acted in a reality show together as imaginary lovers. Moreover, the recently completed production of Extreme Youth was co-starred by her and Gu Xingza. She should be coming. If it weren't for Xingzhe, Yun Shishir definitely wouldn't have become so popular. I like her because she acted with Xingzhe in The Green Apple. If it weren't for Xingzhe, who would have noticed her? Chapter 2900. Just as the fans were discussing animatedly, a nanny van sped through the entrance of the funeral parlor. Everyone couldn't help but look over. The black Mercedes-Benz stopped steadily. In the car, Yun Shishir leaned against the back seat uneasily. She felt the car stop and couldn't help but feel even more nervous. She was wearing a black dress today. For today's memorial service, the Gongjia had accompanied her and specially bought a simple but elegant black dress. She didn't have any makeup on. There weren't many embellishments on her clear face. She only wore a pair of black sunglasses to block out the wind and light. Because of her eye injury, the doctor didn't say much when he found out that she was going to attend the memorial service. Instead, he repeatedly asked her to wear sunglasses. Her eyes had become extremely fragile now. Even a weak wind would cause further damage to her eyes. Yun Shishir obeyed him obediently. "Have we arrived?" she asked carefully, keeping her voice very low. Muyaja said, "Yes, we're here." "Wait a moment." He opened the car door first. When the media saw that it was him, they all crowded around and went crazy for the license plates. When Muyaja saw the media surrounding them with their cameras, he thought that these strong spotlights would definitely cause damage to her eyes. Hence, he immediately ordered the bodyguards that he had brought along with him to separate the media reporters. When the media saw that he had come prepared with 2 strong bodyguards, they naturally didn't dare to be presumptuous. Moreover, in such an occasion, if the artiste wasn't willing to cooperate, they wouldn't be persistent. Hence, they obediently retreated to the side and didn't make things difficult for them. Muyaja turned around and held Yun Shishir's hand, helping her out of the car. Her eyesight was already very low and she was close to blindness. However, with the weak light, she could still distinguish some things. After she got out of the car and steadied herself, she held his arm and said in a hoarse voice, "Let's go in." When the fans saw Yun Shishir holding Muyaja's arm and walking over, they couldn't help but get excited. "Look! It's really Yoon Shirshir. Is she not wearing any makeup? I think she's barefaced, but she's still so pretty. Her skin is so fair without any blemishes. Yes. I admit that I was scared. She's elegant and pretty. But why is she wearing sunglasses? Many celebrities wear sunglasses. One of the fans suddenly said angrily, "If you wear sunglasses, won't you be able to hide your indifference?" When attending funerals, many celebrities would wear sunglasses. However, the situation of wearing sunglasses was different. In some cases, it was to hide the traces of their true sadness. When a celebrity passed away, celebrities from all walks of life would attend the funeral. Some were unrelated while some were related, but the depth of their relationship was different. After all, some were close friends and some were just friends who had acted in the same movie together. Needless to say, those celebrities who were close to the deceased were grieving. Those who were deeply in love with the deceased did not eat or drink for 3 days, washing their faces with tears all day long. If such a close friend appeared at the funeral, he would definitely look haggard and lose all his elegance. Chapter 2901. After all, celebrities had to rely on their image to make a living. Moreover, there were so many paparazzi at the scene. If someone took a photo of her swollen eyes, it would be too embarrassing. However, most of the time, she wore sunglasses to hide her indifference. Only a few celebrities came for the sake of love at the funeral. More celebrities used the funeral of a big star as an opportunity to show themselves. Because other than the various award ceremonies, the funeral of a big star should be the most crowded occasion for celebrities. In the middle of a funeral, and their feelings had not reached that level, the sadness they squeezed out would look fake no matter how one looked at it. Hence, they could only use sunglasses to hide it, letting kind people think that the pairs of eyes behind the sunglasses that were not even wet were already red from crying. Other than that, it was to prevent sneak shots. Of course, this was also a kind of cover-up. It usually happened to female celebrities. Female celebrities would definitely compete in public, but funerals seemed to be the only place that was not suitable for female celebrities to show off their talents. There was no need for color, nor was there a need for the atmosphere. Once female celebrities gave up on their gorgeous clothes and makeup, most of them would lose confidence in their image. A pair of sunglasses was equivalent to saying that they were in an imperfect state, because they knew that the entertainment reporters, who were everywhere, would never miss a celebrity's funeral. It was popular for celebrities to wear sunglasses at funerals. After all, as celebrities they were always acting. When they attended the funeral, they did not forget that they were actors. The fan said sarcastically, "I think she must be here to freeload off the exposure, right?" Ever since her debut, she's been freeloading off Xingza's popularity. But Xingza is no longer around. Even at the last moment, she didn't forget to freeload off his popularity. Besides, look at her. Her face is so clean. She didn't shed a single tear. She even came with Muyaja on her arm. Isn't this obviously freeloading off the media's exposure? That's right. I also realized that she didn't cry much at all. Could it be that she's wearing sunglasses to hide her tears? How annoying. I didn't expect her to be such a person. If it weren't for Xingza supporting her, who would remember her name? Since she didn't have any feelings for Xingza, why did she reluctantly attend the memorial service? She must be here to freeload off the exposure. All the media outlets are here for Xingza's memorial service today. It's such a good opportunity, so of course she wants to freeload. Yoon Shirshir, on the other hand, did not hear these whispers. She was not in the mood to care about other people and things at the scene. Her heart was heavy, as if a huge rock was pressing down on her. She tried hard to suppress her emotions and held back her tears as much as possible as she slowly walked into the memorial hall. Qinzhou was standing at the door. When he saw her, he bowed slightly and hugged her. Qinzhou was inevitably surprised by her arrival. "Why are you here?" Qinzhou paused for a moment before adding, "Actually, it doesn't matter if you don't come." "Qinzhou, Yoon Shirshir couldn't hold it in anymore. She sobbed and said, "I'm here to send him off." "Are you okay?" Qinzhou saw her in this state. She didn't seem to be optimistic. Not good at all." Yoon Shirshir took a deep breath and said, "I'm sorry, I lost my composure." Chapter 2902. "Are you okay?" Qinzhou saw that she was not in a good state. "No, I'm not okay at all." Yun Shirshir took a deep breath. I'm sorry, I lost my composure. Qin Zhou's heart ached when he saw this. However, he could deeply understand Yun Shirshir's pain. But now he couldn't comfort her at such a time. Because even he didn't know how to calm his emotions. Don't cry. Xingzi definitely hopes that you can live well and be happy forever. My condolences. She was wearing sunglasses, but it couldn't hide her haggard expression. As soon as Qin Zhou finished speaking, she took a deep breath again, but didn't say anything in the end. Mu Yaja helped her slowly into the memorial hall. In the memorial hall there were sad sobs. Looking around, other than the celebrities, there were also many A-list celebrities and celebrities. Many female and male celebrities were wearing sunglasses, perfectly hiding the expressions on their faces. However, it was unknown if these sobs were acting, or if they were expressing their true feelings. Yun Shirshir stood in the corner with a wooden expression, quietly waiting with her head lowered. For a moment her thoughts were in a mess. For a moment her mind was blank. Even though there was a commotion around her, she seemed to be unable to hear anything. Her heartache constantly reminded her of where she was at this moment. Gu Xingzi's memorial service. It was as if a lifetime had passed. Things remained the same, but people had changed. Yun Shirshir clenched her fists tightly and tried her best to hold back her tears. This was what she had promised. She would definitely send him off with a smile. If there really was a heaven and a soul, Xingzi probably wouldn't want to see her tears, right? The memorial service was about to begin. Han Yuyan, on the other hand, was the last to make her appearance. She had deliberately chosen this time. Perhaps it was because she was participating in some fashion week or walking the red carpet of a film festival. She was already used to being the last. Hence, even if it was a funeral, she was still used to being late. When she got out of the nanny van just now, many media outlets saw that she was attending the funeral and surrounded her with their cameras. Yuyan, why did you decide to attend the memorial service today? I heard that after you and Gu Xingzi started dating, your love turned into hatred. The two of you fell apart and stopped contacting each other for a long time. Is attending Xingzi's funeral to bury the hatchet? Amidst the flashing lights, many media outlets pointed their microphones at her. Han Yuyan stood still, faced the camera, and elegantly took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red and swollen because of her sadness. I'm really sad about Xingzi's departure. There are some topics that I really shouldn't talk about, but I deeply regret Xingzi's leaving. I only hope that he can rest in peace. Hopefully, everything will be fine in heaven. Han Yuyan read the interview script that the company had prepared early in the morning and acted with all her might. Her tears moved many of the fans present. I heard that Han Yuyan and Master Xingzi dated for a period of time. In that case, it should be considered as an old love, right? I didn't expect Han Yuyan to be so loyal. She ignored the criticism and attended Lord Xingzi's memorial service. This means that she's sincere to Xingzi. Han Yuyan's tears won the favor of many fans. Chapter 2903. She even pretended to be hurt. After the media interview, she walked into the memorial hall crying and wiping her tears. Her footsteps were soft and she staggered. Her assistant supported her as if she was going to faint the next moment. After entering the memorial hall, without the media following her, she finally let down her guard. She quickly wiped her tears with a wet towel and stood in the crowd. Han Yuyan glanced at the media outside the door and deliberately avoided them in the corner. She asked softly, "Did they take a bad picture of me just now?" The assistant smiled and said, "Don't be afraid. I saw it just now. You cried beautifully just now. When the media takes a picture and posts it online, the fans will definitely be stunned by your beautiful face." Han Yuyan's lips curled into a smug smile. If one could cry beautifully like a fairy, that was also a skill. Many female celebrities were beautiful when they were still, but when they acted in a crying scene it was simply unsightly. Han Yuyan, on the other hand, had become famous because of her weeping scenes. Unfortunately, this conversation was heard by Yun Shirshir. Just based on the recognition of the voice, she was able to recognize who the voice belonged to. Han Yuyan. Were those tears just now squeezed out for the media to see? Recalling her words just now, Yun Shirshir suddenly felt as if she had swallowed a fly alive. A turbid breath brewed in her chest. It was difficult to swallow, but she couldn't vent it out. She couldn't help but say coldly, You won't even let go of the memorial service. Even if it's Xingzi's memorial service, you still want to use it to create hype. Han Yuyan's back stiffened. She turned around abruptly and saw Yun Shirshir. Just as she was about to retort, she caught sight of the man who was protecting Yun Shirshir like a guardian angel. Muyaja. Why is he here too? Seeing that she had turned around, Muyaja also turned his gaze and glanced at her, but it was extremely cold and indifferent. Han Yuyan shuddered and hurriedly turned around. With Muyaja around, Han Yuyan really didn't dare to have any conflict with Yun Shirshir. The memorial service finally began. The live broadcast began to play Gu Xingzi's music. The first song was a cover of Gu Xingzi's song Keywords in his concert. Because of this song, Gu Xingzi won the peak music chart. Love yourself. Someone will love you. That's an optimistic statement. The appearance of happiness I feel so real. Can't find an adjective. Silence is masking. Overflowing passion, only the particle remains. Have a kind of steadiness when you say my name. Position of fallen leaves. Compose a poem. Time is disappearing. Our story begins. This is the first time. Show me that love can be both generous and selfish. You are my keyword. Keywords. Upon hearing this song, Yun Shirshir froze all over. She could still remember the scene of their first date in the coffee shop during the recording of The Love Diary. She had forgotten all the plot, but she had never forgotten it. He walked up to the small stage and sat in front of the tripod piano. He played the song affectionately and sang by himself. I'm not sure. The best way to love be a verb or noun. I'd love to tell you. The most erotic of feelings, but I forget the words. Sometimes we meet and sometimes we part. Crying and laughing are also matters. I'm not afraid of subtext. Have a kind of steadiness. My name is in your heart. Position of fallen leaves. Compose a poem. Our story. Just about to begin. This is the first time. To love someone so generously and selfishly. You are my keyword.